Shinya County, Young Manor. Within the Young Manor, a man examines the tiny hand of a newborn. Young Daemyung sighs in relief. He asks how the baby is doing. The man states that it will be hard for the baby to live past 20 years old, given his constitution. The baby gurgles, oblivious to the grim prognosis. The man wonders if this is a punishment from the heavens, because the child caused his mother to die due to his birth. The panel identifies Young Daemyung as the Young Manor patriarch. Young Daemyung expresses disbelief that the man is telling a physician that. The man continues, his words obscured. He asks how Young Daemyung could say that of his own child, one who will die young. The man notes that this is similar to the 9 severed meridians, and he has never seen anyone with their biwi acupoint open to such an extreme. He inquired if the acupoint on the top of the head was being referenced. The man with silver hair raised his hand, a grim expression on his face. It was explained that people usually call that deity ascension. One figure questioned if that wasn't something powerful Taoists did when departing for the heavenly realm. Young Daemyung touched his forehead, stating he didn't know if they had heard of martial masters using the upper meridian of their heads. It was clarified that he was using the Baihui acupoint, that so-called deity ascension. The text explained that it happens when someone gets too drunk on the energy of the great nature and dies because they cannot withstand it. The man's eyes narrowed, a sense of foreboding in his gaze. The baby made a small sound, looking up with wide eyes. Elsewhere, a man stood over the baby, his expression unreadable. The man with black hair stated that it seemed he was right, and this was heavenly punishment. The baby looked up, as if questioning how he could call himself a father. A voice ordered the physician to return, promising payment from the chief steward. The offer was refused. Young Daemyung turned away, the sound of footsteps echoing behind him. A disembodied voice mused on what could have been, had he grown up in unorthodox sex. The voice continued, reflecting on how he was born a hated child in such a place. The voice predicted that he would die young in the countryside, without any way to survive. Young Daemyung's expression remained unreadable. The voice pondered what could have been if he had found enlightenment on his own. Decades later, time passed, and the scene shifted to Young Manor. The Young Manor stood, a testament to the passage of time. A voice spoke of a deceased father, Sien Jiamja of the Zhongnan sect, who founded the clan. He declared his life's dedication to revitalizing their clan's prominence. Young Manor patriarch believed that if their clan became world-renowned, he would inherit the Zhongnan sect's ultimate technique. How could he possibly shut down their clan business? He was truly glad that at least his son followed in his deceased father's footsteps, managing to join the Zhongnan sect. The clan members offered congratulations to each other, marveling that he would become a disciple. The patriarch called for everyone to raise their glasses in celebration. The clan members gathered around the table, ready to toast. A clan member noted that Yinshin was not present yet. He stated that he had told him to stay at the training ground. Young Manor patriarch believed it was better for him not to be present on such a joyous occasion. Another clan member thought that he would bring ill omens. The training ground stood silent and still, a figure trained with intense focus. He focuses, energy swirling around him as he refines his technique. The energy intensifies, forming rings of power around him. His eyes snap open, a surge of power visible within them. The energy explodes outward, a display of raw power. The swirling energy continues to intensify, becoming more concentrated. He stands amidst the remnants of his training, the air still crackling with energy. He examines his hand, feeling the power that now flows through him. He clenches his fist, focusing his energy. He thinks, with a movement art, I can stimulate my muscles with energy, then compress it. He continues his internal monologue, my body can't get any stronger than this. We'll have a longer lifespan now that I have a stronger body. The movement art. Yinshin, you created a martial art? He confirmed his understanding, acknowledging his brother's words. The man with the top knot held a book, listening intently to Yinshin's explanation. Yinshin's expression was serious as he was addressed by name. The man with the top knot cautioned him not to misunderstand his intentions. Yinshin's brother expressed concern, hoping he wouldn't reveal the new martial art. He questioned Yinshin's motives, wondering if he wanted to learn the martial arts he created. Yinshin's brother worried about the potential risks, asking who would take responsibility if he died. His expression hardened as he questioned Yinshin's audacity in altering the clan's martial art. The man with the top knot challenged Yinshin, asking if he thought he was the clan founder. Yinshin's brother seemed to be considering something, his expression unreadable. The focus shifted to his attire, a red robe tied with a black sash. The text defined a clan founder as someone who creates martial arts. He sat, his expression thoughtful as he considered his path. He watched as people hurried past, a sense of purpose in their steps. Two figures discussed the reason for the commotion. Where are they all going? One asked. The other replied, Oh, I think today's the day the martial masters of the Zhongnan sect visit. A vision of martial prowess flashed before him, warriors engaged in fierce combat. He looked up, a flicker of determination in his eyes. He wanted to meet them in person. A woman in a red robe stood before him, her expression unreadable. Because I caused my mother's death with my birth? This is the patriarch's order. Yinshin's brow furrowed, a question forming in his mind. My father ordered this? Elsewhere, a man bowed his head in apology. I'm sorry, Master Yinshin. He looked down, his expression unreadable as he contemplated the scene before him. Footsteps echoed through the courtyard, announcing someone's approach. A voice mused that it might be fine to observe from a distance, hoping to learn from such skilled masters. The crowd stirred, their attention drawn upwards, though one voice doubted they were looking at the sky. Someone wondered if the arriving figure was the sword dragon, perhaps an elder, while another voice expressed the honor it would be for their clan if such people visited. A murmur rippled through the assembled crowd as they awaited the arrival of the martial masters. A shout pierced the air, declaring that they had arrived. The speaker confirmed that the martial masters of the Zhongnan sect had indeed arrived, eliciting a hushed response. More footsteps echoed as the person in the red robe continued to walk towards the arriving masters. The sound of footsteps grew louder as the person in the red robe approached the masters. The person continued their ascent, each step bringing them closer to the awaited figures. A soft gasp escaped as someone caught sight of the arriving masters. The assembled crowd reacted with surprise to the announcement. The words echoed. A noble race had arrived. A woman with flowing blonde hair stood tall, radiating an otherworldly grace. The announcement reverberated. A noble race was here. They were known in books to be a mysterious race, living forever, thought of as deities. The woman's presence commanded attention. An energy surrounded her, palpable and divine. The core energy condensed in one's body was being exuded out of her body naturally. The crowd murmured in awe as the noble race arrived. Young Damyung expressed his honor at their visit. Young Damyung introduced himself as the patriarch. He expressed his gratitude for the welcome and hospitality. Yeo Il Shin, an elder of the Zhongnan sect, introduces herself. Young Damyung's eyes widened, a bead of sweat trickling down his brow. He stammered an apology, realizing the gravity of the situation. The assembled crowd lowered their heads, awaiting her response. Yeo Il Shin acknowledged their apology, noting their long journey. Young Damyung chuckled nervously, eager to rectify his mistake. Yinshin watched, pondering the implications of her noble status. The crowd parted as Yeo Il Shin prepared to enter. Her steps echoed softly on the stone floor. The assembled members of the Zhongnan sect bowed deeply. An attendant gestured, inviting her to proceed further inside. Yeo Il Shin's gaze remained calm and composed. She stood with young Damyung and Yinshin, the air thick with unspoken words. A surge of energy emanated from the man, with black hair, a palpable intensity. Yinshin watched the man, while Yeo Il Shin listened to young Damyung's apology. Young Damyung admitted that the child in question was his third son. The onlookers exchanged glances, a mixture of surprise and curiosity on their faces. Yeo Il Shin noted that he had bright eyes and looked very smart. Young Damyung apologized, saying his third son wasn't very well-mannered. Someone questioned if he wasn't well-mannered, and young Damyung admitted it was embarrassing, but his son was a troublemaker. A figure stood silently, their presence adding to the already tense atmosphere. A voice reflected on gaining a new perspective after seeing the energies of the Zhongnan sect's martial masters were mentioned as a sword was drawn. Someone reflected on having nowhere else to climb after training in the Young clan's movement arts, wondering what to train in. He carefully examined the blade, his expression focused as he prepared for his training. The steel glinted in the light as he tightened his grip, ready to begin. He thought to himself that it would be good to try training with swords in this place. Two figures stood observing the seated individual, one remarking that this place was better than they had initially thought. One of the men agreed, acknowledging the other's assessment of their current location. The abundance of earth energy was evident, enough that the tyrant sword tribe would undoubtedly desire this land. Yeo Il Shin stated that they would definitely come to this place, so it would be good for them to plan a counterattack. The speaker considered the cost, realizing that any conflict would result in the sacrifice of their clan. The two men shared a look, their expressions grim as they contemplated the impending conflict. Yeo Il Shin hoped that things would go well, though she knew the odds were stacked against them. The mention of 13 skies hung in the air, a heavy implication of what was to come. Within the tyrant sword tribe, they were known as the most problematic bunch, a force to be reckoned with. She listened to the instructions, taking a sip of her tea. The aroma filled her senses as she pondered the words. But Yeo Il Shin kept recalling the strange child from just now. He clearly stood out among the rest, she mused. Meanwhile, what a strange child, she thought. The third son of this clan sat in meditation. A faint blue glow emanated from him. He focused his mind, seeking inner peace. He wondered what was opening. The energy swirled around him, intensifying. Although he hadn't been able to meditate for a year, he had been focused on training his body via the Jung clan's movement arts. The amount of energy that goes through his head has gotten even greater. He floated, seemingly unconscious, as the weight of his mortality crashed down. His eyes widened, a stark realization dawning within him. If that happens, the thought echoed. Less than 5 years to live? Despair began to creep into his expression. Fearful, he tried to shield himself from the truth. He was scared. Even with mastery of the Jung clan's movement arts, he felt powerless to stop what was coming. He looked up, a sense of dread washing over him. His eyes darted around, searching for an answer. What was happening? He felt an ominous energy approaching. The ominous energy emanated from that side, a looming threat on the horizon. He advanced cautiously through the Jung manor, the air thick with anticipation. Something felt off. The closer he got, the stronger the scent of blood became. His eyes narrowed, a sense of unease washing over him as he scanned the surroundings. It was too quiet, far too quiet, and that was the most unsettling thing of all. He realized it was a trap formation, and he was walking right into it. The sound of his footsteps echoed ominously in the stillness. His eyes widened in alarm, a growing dread creeping into his heart. The scene before him was gruesome. Bodies lay scattered across the courtyard. The carnage was absolute, a testament to the brutality that had unfolded. He thought, how could he not realize something like this was happening within the Jung manor? His expression hardened, a grim determination settling over his features. He surveyed the scene, the air thick with a metallic tang of blood. Was this carnage the result of a trap formation? He wondered, his gaze sweeping across the fallen. The lifeless eyes stared blankly, reflecting the horror of their final moments. They were all part of the Jung clan. Did the culprits possess overwhelming martial prowess? He considered, his eyes narrowing. But then, a flicker of movement caught his attention. Wait, there's someone alive still? Elsewhere, a bald man with swords strapped to his back stood over the carnage. What a fool. He sneered at the survivor. If you managed to stay alive, you should have stayed hidden instead of crawling out. One of the men behind him spoke. Guess he's got a short life. Send him to the afterlife. The third son's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing with grim resolve. The bald man continued, because I was ordered to. Don't blame me for this. The third son thought, is that so? I'm only killing you. His hand clenches, fingers tightening into a fist, ready for battle. The third son's gaze hardens, his expression resolute as he prepares to fight. He clashes with a hulking figure, the force of their blows creating a shockwave. The large man's arm moves with incredible speed, ready to strike. The large man's face contorts in rage, his eyes wide with fury as he attacks. The air crackles with energy as the two fighters exchange blows. The third son parries the attack, sparks flying as their weapons meet. The large man cries out in pain, his face a mask of agony. He stands amidst the chaos, his blue hair swaying slightly. Elsewhere, the aftermath of the battle is revealed, a room littered with corpses. Two more men stand guard, their swords drawn and ready for any remaining threats. One of the men examines his bloodied arm, the cost of the brutal fight evident. He stood tall, his expression unreadable as he faced his unknown foe. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, ready to draw it at a moment's notice. The red-haired man narrowed his eyes, demanding to know who he was. The third son of this clan, he declared, his gaze unwavering. Elsewhere, the Shinya County Jung manor stood silent under the night sky. A man with long, silver hair carefully adjusted the blanket around a sleeping baby. Another man looked on, concern etched on his face as he asked about the child's condition. A grim prognosis hung in the air. The baby would be lucky to live past 20 years old. The infant stirred in its sleep, oblivious to the dark fate predicted for it. A man wondered if this was a punishment from the heavens, a child cursed for causing his mother's death. Jung Manor patriarch, Jung Dae-myung, appears contemplative, his gaze distant. A man in a blue robe sits across from him, expressing disbelief. He can't believe Jung Dae-myung is telling a physician this. The man in the blue robe continues, questioning how could. The man in the blue robe holds a baby, concern etched on his face. He asks if Jung Dae-myung is saying that of his own child, one who will die young. The baby lies swaddled, seemingly unaware of the grim pronouncements. It is similar to the 9 severed meridians. The man in the blue robe asks if Jung Dae-myung is referring to the acupoint on top of the head. Jung Dae-myung confirms that if the Baihui acupoint is too open, one will die soon. Jung Dae-myung gestures with his hand, emphasizing the danger. People usually call that deity ascension. The man in the blue robe questions, deity ascension? The man in the blue robe questions if that isn't something that Taoists that are very powerful do when they depart for the heavenly realm. He asks if Jung Dae-myung believes that nonsense. Jung Dae-myung touches his forehead, explaining that he doesn't know if the man in the blue robe has heard of absolute martial masters using the upper meridian of their heads. That's using the Baihui acupoint. That's so-called deity ascension. is when someone gets too drunk on the energy of the great nature that came from the heavens and earth and dies because they cannot withstand it. His eyes narrowed, a storm of fury brewing within their depths. The infant gurgled, oblivious to the turmoil surrounding him. He stood silently, observing the child in the basket with a somber expression. I see. It seems I'm right that this is heavenly punishment, the man muttered, his gaze fixed on the baby. The baby's inner thoughts seemed to cry out, how could you call yourself a father? A voice declared it was time for the physician to return, promising payment from the chief steward. A defiant voice echoed, I don't need it. He watched the scene unfold, his expression unreadable as the other man spoke. A narration spoke of what could have been had the child grown up in different circumstances. The text continued, lamenting that the child was born as a hated being in such a place. A grim prediction filled the air. The child would die young in the countryside, without any way to survive. He lowered his gaze, his thoughts hidden beneath the wide brim of his hat. He sought enlightenment on his own. Decades later, at Young Manor, time had marched on. The Young Manor stood tall, a testament to the clan's enduring legacy. The clan was founded by his deceased father, a disciple of the Jongnon sect. Young Daemyeong had dedicated his life to bringing revival to their clan. He mused that if their clan became famous throughout the world, he would have inherited the ultimate technique of the Jongnon sect. How could he close down their clan business? Young Daemyeong was glad that at least his son followed in the footsteps of his deceased father and managed to join the Jongnon sect. Brothers offered congratulations, acknowledging his son's achievement. Young Daemyeong raised his glass, calling for everyone to join him in a toast. The others at the table looked on, ready to celebrate the clan's continued success. A voice piped up, noting that Yinshin wasn't present yet. He instructed him to remain at the training grounds. The Young Manor Patriarch's words hung heavy in the air. The Patriarch took a sip from his cup, his expression grim. It was better if he wasn't present for such a joyous occasion. The Patriarch believed he would only bring ill omens. The man in white robes remained silent, listening intently. Elsewhere, a distant training ground stood silent, awaiting the arrival of its next practitioner. Long, dark hair flowed as a figure began to move, surrounded by a faint blue glow. The figure's eyes remained closed, their expression serene despite the gathering energy. A surge of blue energy emanated from the figure, swirling around them like a protective aura. The energy intensified, causing a visible ripple in the air around the figure. The figure's power continued to build, the air crackling with unseen force. The blue energy coalesced, forming intricate patterns around the figure. The figure stood amidst this swirling energy, their presence commanding and resolute. Opening their eyes, the figure gazed forward, a hint of a smile playing on their lips. A fist clenches, energy gathering around it, as if preparing to strike. The technique allows him to stimulate his muscles with energy, compressing it for maximum power. He wonders if having a stronger body will grant him a longer lifespan. The technique is known as the movement art. Yinshin is asked if he created a martial art. He confirms that he did, addressing the speaker as brother. Yinshin explains that he didn't create it from scratch, but simply redeveloped their clan's exclusive martial art. The brother seems to be thinking about what Yinshin said. The brother tells Yinshin not to take what he's about to say the wrong way. He continues, saying it would be better if Yinshin didn't tell anyone about this. The brother asks if Yinshin wants him to learn the martial arts he made. The brother wonders what would happen if he experienced energy deviation while learning it and died, and if Yinshin would take responsibility. He faces a stern inquiry. How dare he meddle with the clan's exclusive martial art? Is he out of his mind? The man demands to know if the third son thinks he's a clan founder or something. The third son remains silent, considering the accusation. The third son sits pensively, as the narrative explains that a clan founder is someone who creates martial arts and found a martial group. He states that he never thought of himself as someone who creates martial arts. He just wanted to become healthy and live with everyone. He urges others to go quickly. Two girls wonder where everyone is going. One thinks it's the day the martial masters of the Jongnon sect visit. The narrative explains that the Jongnon sect is one of the 9 great sects in the world, known as one of the twin walls that are the strongest groups in Shaanxi alongside the Manhwa sect. This was the place where the deities of swords were located. He wanted to meet them in person to understand their power. The third son of this clan stood before Yeo Il Shin. He wondered if his birth caused his mother's death. The third son questioned if his father had ordered this meeting. Yeo Il Shin apologized to the third son, Master Yinshin, for the situation. A figure with long, flowing hair contemplated the events unfolding. Footsteps echoed as the third son made his way through the halls. He thought it might be fine if he saw them from afar. He was sure he could learn something from such skilled masters. A group of people gathered, discussing the situation. They thought it was probably not the sky they were looking at. The group speculated if it was the sword dragon, or perhaps an elder. They considered it an honor if such people visited their clan. The group stood in anticipation, the air thick with unspoken expectations. The announcement rang out. They were here. The martial masters of the Zhongnan sect had arrived at the temple. The masters made their way through the temple grounds, their footsteps echoing. The sound of their approach reverberated through the courtyard. A noble race had arrived, their presence immediately felt. The air shimmered around them, a testament to their power. The onlookers were shocked by the arrival of the noble race. Whispers spread among the crowd. A noble race had arrived. Yeo Il Shin stood tall, her presence radiating power. The announcement echoed. A noble race was here. The crowd murmured, recalling tales of a mysterious race. Yeo Il Shin's hair flowed in the wind, a symbol of her ethereal nature. The onlookers felt the energy surrounding her, a palpable force. The core energy, condensed within her, was now naturally exuding from her body. The arrival of the Zhongnan sect elder caused a stir among those present. The young manor patriarch was utterly honored by the visit to their humble clan. The patriarch introduced himself. I am the patriarch, Young Daemyeong. Young Daemyeong expressed his gratitude for the welcome and hospitality. The elder of the Zhongnan sect introduced herself. I'm Yeo Il Shin, an elder of the Zhongnan sect. The man's face contorted in disbelief at the revelation of a noble race elder. He stammered, begging forgiveness for not recognizing a deity before him. Yeo Il Shin asked them to raise their heads, stating she was not there to boast of her status. Young Daemyeong apologized for his disrespect, lamenting that he kept the sword deities of the Zhongnan sect waiting outside. Young Daemyeong chuckled, offering to bring them inside. The man wondered how long she had lived, being a noble race elder of the Zhongnan sect. He walked alongside Yeo Il Shin, the sounds of their footsteps echoing softly. The rhythmic cadence of their steps marked their progress through the manor. A group from Young Manor watched them pass, their expressions a mix of curiosity and respect. A member of the Young Manor led Yeo Il Shin, guiding her through the estate with careful steps. This way, please. Yeo Il Shin's gaze remained steady, observing the surroundings with a discerning eye. The guide's face was partially obscured, but his attentiveness to Yeo Il Shin was clear. A young man lowered his head, his expression unreadable. His hands were clasped together, a gesture of respect or perhaps apprehension. Oh! A voice declared, that child is my third son. The faces of the Young Manor members reflected a mix of emotions, from surprise to curiosity. Someone observed, he has really bright eyes. He looks very smart, as Yeo Il Shin listened. Young Daemyeong apologized, I'm truly sorry. My third son isn't very well-mannered. He acknowledged the comment about the third son's lack of manners. The Young Manor patriarch stood with his hands clasped behind his back, listening intently. The third son reflected on gaining a new perspective after witnessing the energies of the Zhongnan sect's martial masters. A sword was carefully drawn from its rack, the click echoing in the training room. He thought to himself that he had nowhere else to improve after mastering the Young clan's movement arts. The third son of this clan held the sword, a determined look on his face as he considered his next steps. His eyes narrowed as he examined the blade, contemplating the path ahead. He mused that it might be beneficial to try training with swords. Meanwhile, Yeo Il Shin listened as young Daemyeong continued to speak, the atmosphere in the room thick with unspoken tension. Young Daemyeong affirmed the other man's statement, nodding slightly as he listened. The narrator observed that with such abundant earth energy, the tyrant sword tribe would undoubtedly desire this location. Yeo Il Shin stated that they would definitely come to this place, so it would be good for them to plan a counterattack. The teacups sat undisturbed as the implications of their discussion settled in the air. Elsewhere, two men stood guard, a gleaming blade held between them, a silent promise of protection. She took a sip of her tea, musing that it would be great if a certain outcome were to occur. The tea set remained, a silent witness to the unfolding events, as the words 13 skies hung in the air. The tyrant sword tribe loomed, a formidable and problematic force to be reckoned with. The blonde-haired woman received a warning, to keep her guard up and her sword aura sharp. She continued to sip her tea, contemplating the gravity of the situation. But he couldn't shake the memory of that child from just now, a lingering concern in his thoughts. The woman with blonde hair clearly stood out among the rest, a figure of quiet authority. A strange child. Elsewhere, a traditional building stood bathed in the pale light of the moon. A figure with flowing blue hair stood bathed in an ethereal glow. He sat in meditation, a faint blue glow emanating from him. A sudden surge of energy coursed through him, causing him to gasp. The energy intensified, swirling around him as he remained still. He reflected on his training, focused on the Young clan's movement arts. The amount of energy flowing through him had increased dramatically. He envisioned himself collapsing, a grim realization dawning on him. His eyes widened in alarm as the implications became clear. If that happens, that meant he had less than 5 years to live. He looked down at his hands, a sense of dread washing over him. His expression turned fearful, his eyes filled with terror. He was scared. Even though he's completely mastered the Young clan's movement arts, he can't stop this. His eyes widen, sensing something amiss. What's happening? He feels an ominous energy coming from that side. The ominous energy emanates from the building ahead. He continues forward, the air thick with anticipation. Something's off. The closer he gets, the stronger the scent of blood is. His expression hardens, a grim realization dawning. It's also way too quiet. That's. A faint glow emanates from the ground. A trap formation? He steps onto the formation, the trap springs. His eyes widen, a dawning horror creeping across his face. The air hangs heavy with the stench of blood and death. The scene is a brutal tableau of carnage, a silent testament to overwhelming force. He thinks, I didn't even realize something like this was happening within the Young manor. His expression hardens, a grim understanding settling in. Bodies litter the courtyard, each a member of the Young clan. He wonders if the trap formation is the cause of this massacre. A close-up reveals the lifeless eyes of a fallen warrior. The grim truth dawns on him. They're all part of the Young clan. He kneels, examining a body, and wonders if the culprits possess overwhelming martial prowess. A voice cries out, wait, there's someone alive still? A bald man stands among the carnage, thinking, what a fool. The man with scars sneers, admonishing his target for emerging from hiding. Another man stands behind him, ready to carry out the order to send him to the afterlife. The third son of this clan narrows his eyes, a cold fury brewing within him. He retorts, stating that he is only killing him. The scarred man explains that he was ordered to do this and shouldn't be blamed. The man's hand glows with power. Yunshin prepares to meet the attack. The assailant lunges, his glowing hand poised to strike. The blow lands with devastating force. The man with scars grits his teeth, his expression one of intense focus. The air crackles with energy. Yunshin meets the attack head-on, their powers colliding in a burst of light. The enemy warrior's scream tore through the air, a sound of agony. He gazed down, his expression unreadable amidst the carnage. The courtyard was littered with bodies, a testament to his deadly skill. Two remaining figures watched, their faces a mixture of shock and fear. Blood dripped from the severed arm, a grim reminder of the battle's cost. The third son of his clan turned his gaze forward, his resolve unwavering. Energy crackled around the blade in his hand, a sign of power. One of the onlookers finally spoke, his voice laced with apprehension. Who are you? The third son of his clan stared back, his blue eyes piercing. The third son of his clan stood ready, his expression unreadable. He gripped the hilt of his sword, his blue eyes narrowed in anticipation. The third son stood amidst the carnage, bodies strewn around him like discarded dolls. With a surge of power, he took a step forward, lightning crackling around his feet. A bald man, face contorted with rage, confronted the third son, his voice rising in fury. The bald man's rage reached a boiling point. His face a mask of fury, the bald man screamed, his veins bulging. Power crackled around the bald man's fist, energy coalescing into a devastating blow. The bald man's fist connected with the third son's face. The force of the impact sent the third son reeling, his vision blurring. He is sent reeling, blood spraying from his mouth as he falls. The third son recovers quickly, drawing his sword in a flash of blue light. Young Daemyung and the bald man are surprised by the sudden counterattack. The words Scripture of Origin Ability appear, highlighting the power of the sword. The bald man's face contorts in rage as he prepares to attack again. The third son clashes with the bald man, their weapons meeting in a shower of sparks as young Daemyung watches. The bald man grits his teeth, determined to overpower his opponent. The third son parries the attack, the blue energy of his sword crackling around him as young Daemyung looks on. The bald man is shocked by the third son's resilience. The bald man's eyes widen as he struggles to maintain his footing. The third son's expression is one of intense focus as he prepares his next move. The third son leaps into the air, his sword poised to strike the bald man as young Daemyung watches. He is sent flying backwards, a gash appearing across his chest. The third son's blade continues its arc, a flash of deadly intent. The sword bites deep, tearing through flesh and bone with ease. Young Daemyung's eyes widen in disbelief, blood spraying from the wound. The third son grits his teeth, his expression a mix of determination and strain. Crimson stains the gleaming blade, a testament to its deadly power. The young manor patriarch collapses, his body falling to the ground. Standing over the fallen man, the third son raises his sword high. His hair whips around him as he prepares for the next strike. The bald man lies defeated, blood pooling around him as the third son towers above. He exhales, his expression unreadable as he looks down at his opponent. He thinks to himself that this was his first time training the delightful sword, but he gets how it works now. He receives a compliment, the words hanging in the air. Pretty impressive. The aftermath of the battle is clear, bodies littering the courtyard. Young Daemyung dismisses the victory, stating it was nothing special. Young Daemyung scoffs at the fallen, blaming their loss on letting their guard down. He stands tall, his red robes stained with the blood of his enemies. The onlookers express their surprise at his skill, questioning how he could be so strong at his age. His gaze is intense, his expression unreadable as he listens to the murmurs around him. The bodies of the defeated lie scattered, a testament to his power. The men watch him, their faces a mixture of awe and apprehension. The text reveals the presence of the Tyrant Sword Tribe and the Blood Flame Cult. The text elaborates, stating that the 13 Skies are the most cruel and powerful in all of Murim, and that the Blood Flame Cult and the Tyrant Sword Tribe are part of them. The men discuss the business of the two organizations of the 13 Skies, but young Daemyung dismisses it as none of their concern. He stood over the fallen, his blade dripping with fresh blood. The man spoke, his voice laced with a dangerous calm. Young Daemyung tilted his head, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. What? The third son pressed, asking if young Daemyung knew that his family was a part of something. The third son spoke of the desolate fortress, the best branch sect in. He gripped the hilt of his sword, preparing to draw it. The air crackled with energy as the fight began. The clash sent debris flying as the battle intensified. One of the men was sent crashing to the ground. The third son's expression hardened as he considered his opponent. That man's the Zhongnan's sex. The man on the ground coughed up blood, struggling to rise. He was sent flying backwards from the force of the blow. The aftermath of the battle was gruesome, bodies strewn across the ground. A figure with blonde hair was sent flying backwards, a trail of light following her. Her face contorted in pain as she crashed downwards, the impact imminent. Someone recognized the fallen figure. Elder Yeo Il Shin, in such a state? She slid across the ground, her sword skittering away from her grasp. The sound of metal scraping against stone echoed through the devastated area. Elder Yeo Il Shin struggled to rise, a pained gasp escaping her lips. The question hung in the air. If the deity of the sword was defeated, who could be the enemy? Meanwhile, a group of figures stood amidst the destruction, their expressions grim as they surveyed the scene. A close-up revealed a face filled with shock and disbelief, the eyes wide with horror. Another figure recoiled, a visible shudder running through their body as they witnessed the devastation. Elder Yeo Il Shin, sword in hand, stared ahead with a look of utter disbelief. The aftermath of the battle was a scene of utter devastation. A figure with long dark hair descended upon the ravaged landscape. A wave of confusion washed over the third son of this clan. Who is it? The figure with long dark hair stood amidst the carnage. The figure's sword glinted ominously in the dim light. A close-up revealed a face of cold determination. One of the onlookers felt the oppressive energy. He's exuding such ominous energy. The figure's gaze was intense, piercing. The third son of this clan struggled to maintain his focus. My head feels light, just from. Light burst from the eye contact, intensifying the pressure. One of the men on the ground called out, "Leader." The others echoed the sentiment. "Tribe leader?" The man's gaze is cold, his expression unreadable as he surveys the scene. He is known as the Tyrant Sword Tribe leader. The Tyrant Sword Tribe leader stands amidst a field of skulls, a harbinger of disasters in Jianghu. Why would a man considered equal to a patriarch of one of the 9 great sects be in a place like this? Meanwhile, Yeo Il Shin looks down at the fallen, her expression unreadable as she grips her sword. A wounded man coughs, blood splattering on the ground. He takes a breath, steeling himself. He thinks, then let me test myself. The third son of his clan's eyes narrow, a fierce determination hardening his features. A surge of power erupts. He lunges forward, his hand outstretched. The Tyrant Sword Tribe leader watches as the third son approaches, unfazed. A sword is drawn, glinting in the light. He clashes swords with an opponent, the force of the blow ringing out. The force of the blow sends the other man reeling, blood splattering. The third son's blade drips crimson, evidence of the brutal exchange. Yeo Il Shin watches with wide eyes, her expression a mask of worry. The third son's face is grim, his eyes narrowed in determination. A chaotic melee erupts, the Tyrant Sword Tribe leader and his men surrounding the third son. The man's face is bloodied, a testament to the ferocity of the battle. The third son's gaze pierces through the chaos, a question hanging in the air. He asks if it will still try to kill him, even if he does this. The third son stands firm, his sword held ready, prepared to face whatever comes next. The Tyrant Sword Tribe leader declares that enough is enough. The third son is watched by the Tyrant Sword Tribe leader, who seems to be asking a question. A voice echoes, declaring that someone's spirit is being assessed. The Tyrant Sword Tribe leader stands with his men, observing the third son. The tribe leader proclaims that the third son's spirit surpasses all others present. One of the tribe leader's men expresses surprise at the statement. Elsewhere, a woman with blonde hair appears, shocked by something she has witnessed. One of the men behind the tribe leader wonders who he was praising. The tribe leader states that he will let someone live. The third son questions if that means the tribe leader cannot kill him. A hand grips the hilt of a sword, preparing for battle. The third son stands ready, facing the tribe leader and his men. He declares that he is the only grandson of the former divine sword squad leader of the desolate fortress. The third son holds his sword, ready to fight. He stands, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as Yeo Il-shin looks on. The revelation hangs in the air. The third son is the grandson of the former divine sword squad leader. Yeo Il-shin's expression is unreadable as she processes the information. The desolate fortress, created by the imperial family, was meant to prevent conspiracy by the Murim forces. It's definitely not a good idea to get involved with them. The tribe leader's gaze is intense. He declares that the third son's lineage is the only reason he's being allowed to live. The tribe leader's words hang heavy in the air as he addresses the third son directly. The third son's eyes widen slightly, a hint of surprise flickering across his face at the tribe leader's words. The third son grips his sword, his expression hardening as he listens to the tribe leader's pronouncements. The tribe leader continues, his voice laced with a hint of regret. He speaks of the desolate fortress. The tribe leader admits that, were it not for the third son's connection to the desolate fortress, he would have taken him as his disciple. Yeo Il-shin's face is a mask of concern as she witnesses the exchange between the tribe leader and the third son. The third son's grip tightens on his sword, his resolve hardening in the face of the tribe leader's veiled threat. A blade descends with crushing force, splitting the ground. The third son of this clan is given an ultimatum. One day, leave this place. The tyrant sword tribe leader declares he will not permit any other sects or clans to step foot on this land. The third son remains silent, listening to the tribe leader's decree. Elsewhere, a group of guards stand over fallen bodies, their swords stained with blood. The tribe leader's gaze is unwavering, his expression unreadable. The third son is told that the tribe leader will always be open to a duel with him. He is challenged to seek revenge when he is ready. The third son's jaw is set, his expression hardening with resolve. The aftermath of a brutal fight is visible, bodies strewn across the courtyard. The third son's eyes burn with a cold fury, his face a mask of grim determination. The tribe leader watches, his back turned, seemingly unconcerned by the carnage. He stands, the long black hair behind him like a dark curtain. Amidst the carnage, the third son of this clan declares, "Father, I'm Yi-shin." Yi-shin explains that this is the Jung clan movement arts, which he created and mastered. He confirms that he made it using the clan's cultivation technique. The man demanded to know what he had just said. How dare he interfere with the clan's exclusive martial art? The man pointed, questioning if he thought he was the clan founder or something more. The third son of this clan looked shocked, as if realizing something profound. Nearby, a dying man gasped, wondering if it could be from back then. He confirmed his suspicions with a weak yes. Coughing blood, the dying man declared that he saw the Jung clan movement art. It was the sacred art created by the Jung clan. The dying man thought, his life fading. The scene was littered with bodies, a testament to the power of the Jung clan. The third son of this clan reflected, realizing he had been ignorant and foolish. The Jung clan. Bloody hands clasped together, a symbol of the violence and legacy of the clan. The dying man, with his last breath, stated that he had. The third son of this clan considered the weight of the dying man's words. Tears streamed down the man's face, his expression a mask of grief. His eyes, red and swollen, reflected the depth of his sorrow. He stared at his bloodied hands, his face unreadable as he looked down. The third son of this clan knelt beside the fallen man, his expression a mix of shock and despair. A voice cried out, "Father," as a hand reached out to touch the fallen man. The third son remained kneeling, his gaze fixed on the lifeless figure before him. Nearby, a woman held a child, concern etched on her face as she spoke of the chief steward. The woman's voice trembled as she asked about Haya, her eyes filled with worry. The woman was reassured that she was safe, simply sleeping after her acupoint had been blocked. It seemed her acupoint was blocked to knock her out, and then she was hidden so the killers wouldn't find her. The third son's expression remained unreadable, his gaze distant. A somber declaration hangs in the air. "Brother." The man kneels beside the fallen figure, a child bundled nearby. He stares at the lifeless face, a question forming on his lips. What about you?" The third son of this clan looks away, stating that he will look after himself. His expression is unreadable as he turns. A voice calls out, addressing him formally, "Sir." He turns to face Yeo Il-shin, who stands framed in a doorway. Yeo Il-shin's expression is unreadable. Another voice calls out, questioning his departure. "Elder, are you leaving now?" His answer is simple and resolute. "Yes." The gravity of the situation settles as one of the men states that the tyrant sword tribe leader has gotten involved, and the Zhongnan sect must be informed without delay. Yeo Il-shin's thoughts drift, questioning if he is going to the desolate fortress. She listened intently as the third son of this clan spoke of his mother's family. The third son admitted he had nowhere else to go to grow stronger. Yeoil Shin proposed a solution, returning with her to Zhongnan Mountain. The woman with blonde hair strongly recommended the offer. To receive such an offer from an elder of a great sect, he was truly honored. Yeoil Shin intended to recommend that he become the sect leader's disciple. His eyes narrowed, considering the implications of such a position. Someone overheard the conversation, reacting with utter shock. A disciple of the sect leader? Yeoil Shin stated that it would be possible for him. He stared ahead, his expression unreadable as he considered the offer. To become the direct disciple of the Zhongnan sect leader meant access to absolute sacred art. More importantly, the Zhongnan sect leader was one of the top martial masters and swordsmen in the world. But the third son hesitated, something weighing on his mind. He clasped his hands together, his gaze lowered in contemplation. Yeoil Shin stood before him, saying, "However, I must apologize." She reassured him, "Don't worry about it." Yeoil Shin continued, explaining that she simply wanted someone talented like him. The third son looked at her, and she said, "Forgive me, it's fine." He remained silent, his expression thoughtful as he clasped his hands. Yeoil Shin looked up at the sky and said, "I have a question for you." "What is it?" The third son turned to Yeoil Shin, waiting for her question. He looks up, a question forming on his lips. "Do you know the method to get the fruit of the world tree?" Yeoil Shin's eyes widened slightly, considering the question. Could the fruit of the world tree be the answer? The text explains that the fruit of the world tree is protected by the desolate fortress leader. The emperor acknowledges him as both king and peer. The world tree stands tall, its massive trunk disappearing into the misty heights. The fruit is said to grant eternal life and youth to those who consume it, a treasure of the heavens. He wonders if eating the fruit would grant him more life in his short lifespan. The third son reflects that he hasn't even lived half his own lifespan, so he has no authority over the world tree. Yeoil Shin states that all she knows is that the desolate fortress leader is able to give that fruit to other people. The third son realizes that in that case, he must go to the desolate fortress, though it won't be easy to get the fruit. Yeoil Shin acknowledges it's a sacred item. He resolves that all he can do is become the Divine Sword Squad leader. Yeoil Shin encourages him to lead and achieve great feats, promising to cheer him on from afar. Yeoil Shin grips the hilt of her sword, determination etched on her face. She states that she must take her leave to bring updates to her sect. One man states that Neutral Spirit Fist will help with cleaning up this place. Neutral Yeoil Shin walks away from the building. A man stands with his hands together. Neutral Yeoil Shin thanks the sirs again for their help. One of the sirs responds that there is no need for thanks, as it is their clan. One of the men says that you could say that they played a part in this tragedy. Meanwhile, the third son looks off into the distance. He is told that an apology won't cut it for everything that has happened in their clan. The third son of this clan responds that he will do his best to be an older brother when they meet again, hoping they both survive. Another man states that while the third son will be learning the Zhongnan sect's martial arts at a slightly later age, he is not exceptional, at least in his eyes. Yinshin embraces a child, as another man tells him that he must train like his life depends on it. He says that he will remember that. The third son's eyes are shown in a close-up, reflecting a deep resolve. A close-up of the child reveals a worried expression. The child calls Yinshin Uncle Yinshin, and he promises to protect Haya. Someone asks the chief steward where he is going. A group discusses that there are small branches of the Jung clan in various places within Nanyang, and that since the bloodline of the Jung clan is alive, they will look after the remaining clan assets. It is stated that someone is heading to the desolate fortress, and they hope to meet from time to time. He thinks that since the chief steward knows martial arts, he'll be of help. Someone responds to Master Yinshin, saying, "Yes, Master Yinshin." The unseen speaker wished him a comfortable life and asked him to take care. The third son of this clan looked off into the distance, his expression unreadable. A group of people watched as he departed, their faces a mixture of concern and resignation. He walked away, the words of farewell echoing in his mind. He hoped that he'd live a comfortable life. An older man watched him leave, his expression thoughtful and perhaps a little sad. Had anyone ever heard any of the Jung clan descendants say that to him after being taken in by the previous patriarch? The third son of this clan stood among the others, his gaze fixed on something unseen. Elsewhere, the city of Xiangyang lay under the watchful eye of the moon. The older man stood with others before a building, perhaps discussing the events that had transpired. He descended the stairs, a bag in hand, the sounds of revelry echoing above. Meanwhile, the city of Xiangyang sprawled beneath a twilight sky, its lights twinkling like distant stars. A lone figure stood on a balcony, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape below. The figure breathed a sigh of relief, finally arriving at their destination. "I'm finally here." Elsewhere, the third son of this clan looked up, his thoughts drifting to the desolate fortress. The desolate fortress is truly incredible. Whispers filled the air, tales of the desolate fortress drawing people from across the Central Plains, each with their own grand ambitions. At a nearby table, patrons discussed the local establishment's woes. The boss here struck the jackpot. He said he's out of liquor to sell. The restaurants were chaotic these days, filled with martial artists eager to prove themselves. The martial artists that came to take their entrance tests are always drunk. He realized there was an entrance exam. There's an entrance test in the desolate fortress? Was there such a thing? A voice called out, inquiring about the desolate fortress. Are you here to take part in the entrance test too? The speaker was Hien Wenchang, his expression curious as he addressed the third son of his clan. Hien Wenchang's question hung in the air, awaiting the third son's response. Hien Wenchang had asked the third son of this household a question. Before the third son could answer, Hien Wenchang spoke again. Oh, I haven't introduced myself. Hien Wenchang gave a thumbs up, a wide smile across his face. Hien Wenchang introduced himself. I'm Young Yinshin of Xinya County. Young Yinshin watched the third son as he took a drink. Young Yinshin commented that the third son must have had an easy journey. You came from somewhere nearby. Your journey here must have been easy. Young Yinshin recalled his own journey. I had to fight green forest bandits and swim against the pirates of the pirate fortress. The water martial arts of the pirates were really vicious. Young Yinshin gestured dramatically as he spoke of his trials. Meanwhile, the third son recalled his own journey, where he had faced a group of bandits. He had dispatched them with ease. I couldn't even see your sword. The third son sat alone in the forest, the bodies of his enemies scattered around him. The third son thought to himself that his journey was indeed pretty easy for him. Back in the building, Young Yinshin looked around, perhaps expecting a reaction from the third son. He and Wenchang leaned in, asking if the third son had any idea. The third son of his clan's expression shifted, a hint of surprise in his eyes. He and Wenchang paused, awaiting a response from the third son. He and Wenchang exclaimed that it was known as the Desolate Fortress Trial. He and Wenchang explained that the Desolate Fortress was quite different from the usual martial art groups. The third son listened intently, his gaze fixed on He and Wenchang. He and Wenchang stated that this was the reason so many people had gathered there. He and Wenchang continued, saying that opportunities and teaching would be provided to those who joined, regardless of their foundations. The third son remained stoic, absorbing the information about the Desolate Fortress. The text described the Desolate Fortress as the strongest martial group in the world. People say that if you want to take on the world with just one weapon, go to the Desolate Fortress. The Desolate Fortress was a place where elixirs and martial arts gathered. He and Wenchang scoffed, dismissing the opinions of those who praised traditional sects. He and Wenchang questioned how commoners could surpass the Desolate Fortress. He believed that if it were possible, they could create an empire. Yinshin listened as He and Wenchang explained that almost nobody could pass the Desolate Fortress trial on their first attempt. He and Wenchang continued, stating that only 1 in 1,000 might pass, usually next-generation leaders gaining fame. He and Wenchang grinned, proposing that they take the test together tomorrow. Yinshin took a sip from his cup, considering the offer. He and Wenchang watched him expectantly, a slight smile playing on his lips. He and Wenchang expressed his relief at Yinshin's easygoing nature, confident he would be okay. He and Wenchang told him to follow, though he admitted he might not look like it. The sound of flapping echoed. The Desolate Fortress banner flapped in the wind, a silent welcome. From above, the third son of his clan and He and Wenchang walked with 2 others. He and Wenchang gestured towards the looming gate. Let's go. The third son of his clan's gaze was steady, his expression unreadable. This was the Desolate Fortress. The plaque reads that he is 13 years old. The man with the top knot confirms the information. The third son of his clan looks off to the side. A crowd watches the proceedings. The judges sit at a table, observing the examinees. The first exam is about to begin. The exam supervisor explains that you will pass if you accept your plaque. The second exam is a tournament. The third son asks if there's a third exam. The man with the top knot puts a finger to his lips. He learns that it is an interview with the Desolate Fortress's lord. The flowing fabric of a cloak hints at the power within. He and Wenchang asks if it is the lord himself. The man with the top knot confirms it. Many martial artists come to Yangyang just for that chance. A conversation with an absolute master like him is an incredible opportunity. They hope to receive some kind of profound understanding. The third son of this clan listens intently, his gaze unwavering. A token is presented, a symbol of the trials to come. The man with the top knot announces that the first exam is about swift sword arts. The man with the top knot instructs them to demonstrate one swing with the fastest sword technique they have. The man with the top knot declares that he shall watch and judge. The judge's gaze is intense, promising a rigorous evaluation. He raises his sword, declaring he will go first, a nervous grin plastered on his face. The judge observes, thinking that all he needs to do is show a fast sword technique. The third son of this clan admits to being nervous as he volunteered for the demonstration. The third son stands ready, facing the judge, as the crowd watches with anticipation. His hand grips the hilt of his sword, ready to unleash his technique. The third son's expression hardens with determination as he prepares to execute the swift sword art. A well-polished spirit emanates from him, the judge noting how strong he is. The judge observes the third son's stance, realizing he's even stronger than some vagabonds he saw on the way here. The third son takes a deep breath, focusing his energy. The sound of the blade cutting through the air echoes as he begins his technique. A whirlwind of motion surrounds him as he executes the swift sword art. The third son completes his demonstration, the judge and spectators watching in awe. The crowd murmurs, sensing something different about the third son's technique. Some admit they didn't even see it. The judges remain stoic, though one admits to only seeing an apparition. The demonstration concludes. Another examinee gulps, feeling the pressure of the competition. The judge with the mustache hums, considering the third son's display. The examinee with the headband gasps, impressed. He demands the third son's plaque, acknowledging his skill. The examinee with long hair wishes him good luck as the third son walks away. He remains focused, his expression unreadable. The third son strides forward, the sound of his footsteps echoing. The examinee with the headband realizes the third son was an examinee all along, surprised. The crowd acknowledges that young swordsman has guts. The judge with the mustache considers that showing sword techniques in front of a martial artist of a desolate fortress is incredibly precious. He walked toward the dueling grounds, each step echoing in the open space. The sound of his footsteps marked the beginning of the contest. The third son of his clan faced Hien Wenchang across the training grounds. The third son lowered his gaze, preparing himself for the fight ahead. Hien Wenchang watched the third son, his expression unreadable. The third son steeled his resolve as the duel was about to begin. With a flap of his robes, Hien Wenchang drew his sword, ready to fight. The third son stood his ground, the air around him crackling with energy. Hien Wenchang's face tightened with focus as he prepared to strike. The crowd watched with bated breath as the duel began in earnest. He grips the hilt of his sword, ready to face his opponent. A collective gasp rises from the crowd. When did he draw his sword? Hien Wenchang faces the third son, his own blade now drawn. The future of Desolate Fortress rests on this fight. The third son draws his sword with a sharp, metallic click. The onlookers exchange worried glances, sensing the gravity of the situation. Hien Wenchang demands, "Hand over your plaque." Hien Wenchang studies his phone, seemingly unconcerned with the duel. A close-up reveals the intensity in his gaze. He tells someone to be on their way. The third son nods, acknowledging the command with a simple, "Okay." He declares, "Now, next up." He walks through the desolate fortress, observed by many. The sound of his footsteps echoes through the fortress grounds. Hien Wenchang approaches the third son. He wonders if he is the son of a famous family. The third son asks if that changes anything about the situation. After entering Desolate Fortress, he heard that only martial arts, talent, and effort matter. Hien Wenchang is surprised that the third son plans on passing the Desolate Fortress's trial. The third son questions why Hien Wenchang came. Hien Wenchang replies that it is not just him, but the third son as well. The third son pauses, considering his words. He agrees with Hien Wenchang, acknowledging the truth in his statement. The third son thanks Hien Wenchang and states that he will be on his way. The third son walks away, leaving Hien Wenchang behind. He walks with purpose, the desolate fortress looming in the distance. A silent hope echoes that the kind and talkative Hien Wenchang passes the second exam, too. He sits in quiet contemplation, his sword resting beside him. His eyes are narrowed, focused on the task ahead. The second exam is a tournament, a competition of martial arts skill. Weeks dwindle until the second exam, and he grips his sword tighter. Considering the upcoming exam, the correct choice is to train his skills. The air crackles as he practices his sword techniques. He vows to train the Jung clan's movement art and rapid sword arts. He will also master the scripture of origin ability, an amplified chi movement technique. The desolate fortress stands tall, awaiting the trials to come. He walked with purpose, the other examinees flanking him on either side. A disembodied voice echoed, instructing the examinees to wait until they were called. The examinees gathered, a mix of anticipation and apprehension hanging in the air as they waited for their turn. An official observed the examinees, his expression unreadable as he assessed their potential. The sight of the white martial arts outfit made him feel discouraged in a way. Someone remarked that the white martial arts outfit signified an elementary-level martial artist, causing some to feel inferior. The man in white stood tall, his energy palpable, causing others to wonder about his strength. It was obvious that even wearing white meant your future was promisingly guaranteed. Young Lord Jung called out to the third son, his voice filled with a mix of surprise and admiration. Young Lord Jung noted that he had gotten even taller, adding that Hien Wenchang also looked better. Young Lord Jung acknowledged that he did accomplish something, a hint of pride in his voice. Hien Wenchang's face was shown in a close-up, his expression unreadable. He is told to remember that winning isn't what's important in this exam. Even having one of the two matches of the tournament is enough to catch the eye of the Desolate Fortress Masters. Two fighters clash, their movements a blur of steel and determination in the arena. One of the figures states that although that's the hardest part, he has experience. The question is posed. Does that mean you can win a match and still fail? The answer is yes. The problem is that the exam supervisors are going to have higher standards today. Someone asks why that is, and it's revealed that the White Qilin is competing at today's Desolate Fortress trial. The third son's eyes narrow, a flicker of something unreadable passing across his face. The White Qilin from Namgung? The third son stands, his sword gleaming in the light, a silent promise of action. It is said that he wiped out a notorious group of bandits before he was even 15. He beheaded the sword master of the unorthodox faction, the Shrouded Assassin. Rumors persisted that he defeated all the up-and-coming fighters. One man wondered what the third son of the Namgung family could possibly lack. The third son's expression remained unreadable. Another man whispered that it was because he was the child of a concubine and could not become the patriarch. The group discussed how rising to the position of Desolate Fortress Lord's captain was of similar standing to a patriarch of the 8 great families. The Desolate Fortress? The order of the Jianghu in the center of the Central Plains. The third son's eyes narrowed slightly. Meanwhile, in Nanyang, Henan province, a voice boomed, calling for Yung Yinshin of Xinya County to come out. A group of people stood silently, waiting. The man with the blue headband seemed concerned. The third son's expression remained unchanged. He stands in the desolate fortress, the air thick with anticipation. A man with a blue headband looks on, his eyes wide with surprise. A voice booms out, filled with conviction. Yes. The third son walks forward, his robes flowing behind him. A man with a gray hat watches intently, his expression unreadable. A group of men stand by, their faces a mixture of anticipation and concern. A man draws his sword, the steel glinting in the light. The third son pauses, a thoughtful expression on his face. A voice shouts, signaling the start of something. Begin. He faces his opponent, the tension palpable in the air. The third son's eyes widen slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He leered, his tongue lolling out as he spoke of despair. The old man's question hung in the air, unanswered. His face contorted in pain as blood splattered. The old man's blood rained down, a crimson shower. The third son descended, sword drawn, a whirlwind of motion. The fortress loomed, a silent witness to the brutal exchange. The old man's eyes widened in shock as the third son stood over him, silent. Silence hung heavy in the air, thick with unspoken tension. The third son of this clan watched, his expression unreadable. A man's face contorted in agony, blood dripping from his mouth. The third son stood alone, his sword a silent promise of violence. Nailed to the wall, the man's suffering was a spectacle. A small crowd gathered, their faces a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. A sinister smile played on his lips, a prelude to something wicked. Boots shuffled on the stone floor, the sound echoing in the tense atmosphere. The third son lowered his gaze, a question hanging in the air. May I begin now? The glint of metal flashed as the sword was drawn, ready to strike. The third son's eyes narrowed, his resolve hardening with each passing moment. He stares intently, his expression unreadable as he considers the situation. The courtyard stands silent as two figures face each other, the tension palpable in the air. From the sidelines, a man observes, declaring that the moment has finally arrived. Whispers spread among the onlookers, wondering who will be the one to take him on. One of the men admits that the figure before them seems stronger than they are. Another voice chimes in, stating that he wouldn't expect any less from a Namgung. The name Namgung hangs in the air, followed by the realization that this must be the White Qilin. Namgung Washin stands opposite the third son, the air crackling with anticipation. The crowd wonders if they are about to witness the legendary Boundless Heaven technique. The man's gaze is steady, his expression hinting at the power he possesses. He observes his opponent, noting the subtle differences in their presence. The third son acknowledges the other man's skill, recognizing his own strengths lie elsewhere. The red and black fabric of his robe shifts as he prepares to speak. The man in the red robe stands with his back to the third son, a sword resting at his side. The man announces, I am Namgung Washin of the Namgung clan. Namgung Washin's expression is serious as he reveals his training focus. Namgung Washin draws his sword, the metal glinting as he says, meet you. The third son stands firm, as Namgung Washin declares he trained the Jung clan movement art. The third son's expression is unreadable as he considers Namgung Washin's words. The sword remains sheathed at Namgung Washin's side. Namgung Washin questions, are you not going to use your sword? The camera focuses on Namgung Washin's hand as he grips the hilt of his sword. He grips the sword, preparing to demonstrate his skill. The third son closes his eyes, focusing his energy. His eyes open, a determined look on his face as he raises the sword. The blade glows with a bright, blue energy. His expression hardens, ready to unleash the technique. He thinks to himself, the main essence of the technique he's been practicing recently is unpredictability. He moves with incredible speed, the sword a blur of light. An unexpected main attack in the midst of an unpredictable rhythm. The sword cuts through the air, leaving a trail of blue energy. His eyes are sharp, focused on the target. A man watches with a shocked expression. Namgung Washin watches with others as the demonstration begins. A hand slams down, signaling the start of the technique. The air vibrates with the force of the unseen power. Glass shatters, the sound echoing through the training hall. He moves with impossible speed, his blade a blur. The red of his robe trails behind him like a comet's tail. His opponent sees only a flash of steel and a determined gaze. Sweat beads on his brow as he focuses all his energy. More glass rains down, a testament to the technique's power. The onlookers are stunned, unsure of what they just witnessed. Namgung Washin is shocked, exclaiming, "What?" at the display. The third son of this clan stands silently, as someone wonders what just happened. Namgung Washin one of the onlookers states, clearly terrified by the display. The man with white hair stares, speechless, at the third son's sword. He thinks it is a delightful sword. The third son of this clan holds his sword, his expression unreadable as he gazes at the blade. The sword hangs at his side, the tassel swaying gently as he stands in silent contemplation. A man with silver hair looks down, admitting to himself that he lost. Another man's eyes widen in shock, his face a mask of disbelief at the admission. The onlookers murmur amongst themselves, questioning what the man meant when he said he lost. The man with white hair thinks to himself, "Young Yinshin, such a scary, delightful sword." The man with the ponytail observes that the third son is younger than the silver-haired man by at least 5 years. Someone wonders if the third son cannot use true energy with his techniques yet, as the third son stands before them. It is said that there was a hidden, powerful martial artist in Hunan, as the man with silver hair looks on. The third son's expression is unreadable, but he is scared of what Young Yinshin will do. A voice calls out, the words hanging in the air. A man questions Young Yinshin, seeking confirmation of his identity. Young Yinshin confirms, his gaze firm as he acknowledges the question. A voice directs someone to another garden to the north, instructing them to stand by there. Another man expresses his desire for a duel with someone at another time. Young Yinshin holds his sword, his fingers tracing the familiar grip. He states that this is what he wanted to say, and he will look forward to it. His eyes narrow, a hint of anticipation flickering within them. The camera pans across the traditional architecture. The building stands tall, a silent sentinel against the sky. A figure in red approaches, their purpose unknown. 2 men sit in contemplation as another looks on, a question forming on his lips. He stands silently beneath the tree, lost in thought. Someone wonders how such a young person could have already passed. He had expected Namgung Washin to make the first move. Knowing victory was unlikely if the fight dragged on, he used his most extreme technique from the start. The clash of swords echoed through the training grounds. Namgung Washin imbued his sword with true energy, shattering his opponent's blade. It was his own fault for rashly using the delightful sword. But instead of fighting on, he admitted defeat. He acknowledges his loss with a quiet resignation. Someone reflects that admitting defeat is a sign of a renowned family's nobility. One wonders if he cannot yet use true energy with his techniques. The swordsman stands ready, his expression unreadable. The Young clan was but a third-rate branch in Shinya County. However, the third son of this clan now understood what was needed. His hand tightened around the hilt of the sword. He realized how it should be used the moment he witnessed it. The sword began to glow with a faint, blue light. It wasn't just as simple as putting his energy into the sword, he realized. He could use the true energy as a medium to become one with the sword. He got it now. Meanwhile, a group of men sensed something was happening. Their expressions shifted to shock and disbelief. Sword resonation. He stood amidst the swirling energy, a faint blue glow emanating around him. The third son's eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face. Impossible? A voice echoed, marveling at his youth as his hand tightened around the sword's hilt. The energy swirled faster, converging around him. The blue light intensified, bathing the area in an ethereal glow. A sensation washed over him, a feeling of complete unity. The sword and his body were one. This must be. The third son stood, the sword now an extension of his very being. Body-sword unification. The hand grips the sword tightly, ready to unleash its power. The sword rises, bathed in an ethereal glow. The sword technique he'll use in this state will be new. His eyes narrow, focusing intently on the blade. A faint smile plays on his lips as the power intensifies. The light in his eyes reflects the mastery he has achieved. A genuine smile now graces his face, radiating confidence. A voice congratulates him on his enlightenment. Another person watches him, perhaps a mentor or fellow warrior. He stared ahead, his expression unreadable as he contemplated his next move. His hand tightened around the hilt of his sword, the tassel swaying gently. Surrounded by others, he sensed their watchful eyes, wondering if he was being protected. Facing an opponent, the third son of this clan wondered if they would dare impede his enlightenment. He listened intently, absorbing the words spoken to him, a quiet thank you escaping his lips. The third son of this clan held his sheathed sword, his expression thoughtful as he considered the implications of the words. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, a silent question hanging in the air. The voice congratulated Sir Namgung on passing the desolate fortress trial. He gripped the sword tighter, the sound of metal on leather echoing softly. Laughter erupted around him, a wave of mirth washing over the scene as the tension eased. A new voice chimed in, announcing, "I'm here too." A small smile played on his lips, a hint of warmth in his eyes. A voice echoes with congratulations, the words hanging in the air. The sentiment is returned, the congratulations echoing through the serene landscape. Young Yinshin speaks to the third son of this clan, informing him that he has earned a nickname. He looks back, questioning the statement, unsure of what he has just heard. It is explained that nicknames are given to those who show exceptional martial prowess or attract attention. The honor bestowed by a nickname is significant, unless the recipient is known for evil deeds. The weight of such a title is not lost on the warriors, their expression serious. The text compares the honor to other legendary figures, Cliff Swordsman, Neutral Spirit Fist, and White Cheelin. The man in the white robe confirms that he too has heard about the nickname. The nickname is revealed, Lightning Genius, a title that seems to resonate with him. He looks off into the distance, perhaps contemplating the weight of this new moniker. Energy crackles around him, a visual representation of the power now associated with his name. A fierce battle unfolds, energy crackling between the combatants. The talent of lightning was being discussed among them. If even the martial artists of the desolate fortress call him that. He listened intently, a slight smile gracing his lips. Young Yinshin questioned if they were mocking someone young who's just a little fast with his sword. The man with the headband asked if it was just a little fast. He continued, if he had a hard time catching his breath, what would he be? The words, Lightning Genius Young Yinshin, hung in the air. The group stood together, the implications of the nickname settling in. A voice boomed, commanding everyone to gather around. Elsewhere, a towering pagoda stood against the skyline. The man declared that only one trial remained for the candidates. He walked forward, his expression unreadable as he approached the next challenge. The desolate fortress stood tall, a testament to history and strength. A meeting was underway with the leader of the desolate fortress. The participants stood in anticipation, awaiting their turn to prove their worth. A little while later, he continued his steady pace, each step echoing in the silent hall. The man with the sword watched with a stern gaze, his expression unreadable. A wave of surprise washed over the faces of those observing the trial. The group watched intently, their anticipation building with each passing moment. The voice mused that everyone came out quickly, wondering if the leader was just looking at faces. He continued to walk, his figure growing smaller in the distance. A sigh escaped the man as he observed the proceedings, his thoughts hidden behind his stoic expression. He heard his name called, signaling that it was his turn. Footsteps echoed as he began his ascent. Young Yinshin, flanked by onlookers, maintained a stoic expression. A voice echoed in his mind, reminding him to keep going until the top. Each step was deliberate, the sound reverberating through the silent hall. The climb continued, each step taking him further into the unknown. He approached a massive, ornate doorway, the entrance to the next stage of the trial. The creaking of the ancient structure filled the air as he neared the top. He stood before the imposing doors, a silent guardian awaiting his arrival. The weight of the challenge pressed down on him as he looked up. The third son of this clan paused, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The air crackled with anticipation as he prepared to face whatever lay beyond. The sound of footsteps echoes through the ornate chamber. He seems to be processing the situation, his expression unreadable. The third son of this clan stands before a figure seated on an elaborate throne. The woman is the desolate fortress leader. The desolate fortress leader is said to be the strongest in the world. The woman introduces herself. I'm Young Yinshin. Young Yinshin looks down. He seems surprised by the revelation. Young Yinshin's gaze is intense. Her hands are clasped in her lap. The third son of this clan hears her words, You are of that child's bloodline. He is shocked. Bloodline? Do you mean? Does she know my mother's family? Young Yinshin's gaze is intense, a slight furrow in his brow. The fortress leader observes, noting that he already seems to know what she means. She finds him quite bold. The third son's expression remains unreadable, his eyes narrowed slightly. Her green eye scrutinizes him, as if trying to see through him. The fortress leader sits casually, while the third son stands with his hand resting on his sword. Young Yinshin speaks of the Elder Council, mentioning that he's about to become a part of it. She adds that he's someone who is very obstinate. The fortress leader observes that he has a wound. The third son remains stoic, his gaze unwavering. He dismisses the wound, saying it's nothing to be concerned about, just trivial family matters. Young Yinshin retorts that they aren't trivial. They're just covered by his trained body. The third son stands silently, listening to her words. The fortress leader muses that he's probably only lived for around 15 years. He stated that the matter of kin needs to be resolved. The third son remains silent, listening intently to Young Yinshin's words. The third son offered his apologies, his expression unreadable. The transcendent air she carries as someone with absolute strength is a separate matter from her trying to interfere with my family matters. Young Yinshin's gaze intensified, a hint of challenge in his eyes. The third son's foot shifted slightly, a subtle sign of his unease. Young Yinshin continued to observe the third son, his intentions unclear. It's interesting that you don't bow down to anyone even though you came here, because you have something. The third son and Young Yinshin stood facing each other, a silent challenge passing between them. He thought to himself, she knows that I came here because I have something I want. Young Yinshin's expression remained enigmatic, his thoughts hidden behind a veil of curiosity. Let's ask her. He wonders if anyone could ever truly understand him. The third son considers the possibility of living if he consumes the world tree's fruit, even if the details are somewhat inaccurate. The woman with green hair turns her head as the third son swallows. The woman assures him that it is possible for him to obtain what he desires. The woman stands with her back to him, her long green hair cascading down her back. The third son realizes she knew his intentions all along and wonders if he can get what he wants. The woman with green hair looks on with a knowing expression. Her gaze is intense, as if she can see right through him. He sighs, seemingly resigned to his fate. The third son states that what he has is good enough for him, and thanks her. He looks down at the sword in his hands, a realization dawning on him. The third son wonders if he is now a martial artist of the desolate fortress. A faint smile graces the woman's lips, her expression unreadable. She grants him permission to leave, her tone suggesting otherwise. The words hang in the air, next Divine Sword Squad leader. He begins to walk away, but the title echoes in his mind. His eyes narrow, considering the implications of her offer. The woman's gaze remains fixed on him, a hint of expectation in her eyes. The title reverberates, the next Divine Sword Squad leader. He wonders if she truly sees potential within him. His steps falter, the sound echoing in the corridor. Or maybe, he muses considering another possibility. He realizes she's implying he could gain the fruit of the world tree. The third son contemplates the power that could be his if he accepts. He considered the woman's offer, his expression betraying nothing of his inner thoughts. Several figures stood together, their expressions unreadable as they considered the implications of the recent news. The man with long blue hair remained stoic, his gaze fixed on some distant point. The group continued their procession, their footsteps echoing in the vast hall. A voice mused, the words hanging in the air. For past, huh? The man with the blue headband remained silent, his expression thoughtful as he listened to the others. The man with the blue headband asked if they knew what kind of work the desolate fortress does. A voice explained that they stopped Murim's martial masters from overthrowing the imperial family. The man with the blue headband acknowledged the statement, but hinted at a deeper purpose. He clarified that stopping rebellions was not their main function, but merely one of their major tasks, implying there was something else they did. The scene shifted to a battlefield, where they prevent or suppress a certain size of conflict from happening in the Jianghu. Chaos reigned as soldiers clashed, a brutal reminder of Murim's volatility. Young Yinshin and the third son of his clan observed the scene, their expressions grim. Young Yinshin knew what would happen when a fight in Murim broke out. It would be fine if the fight was contained to those who coveted manuals of ultimate martial arts or elixirs. When you witness that hellish sight, the empire becomes unrecognizable. The aftermath of the conflict painted a grim picture of devastation and loss. The disaster of the heavenly demon's grave. Young Yinshin recalled that it had been 17 years since the disaster of the heavenly demon's grave. The unorthodox sects and demonic faction aren't the only problems. All orthodox groups would also become problems. A group of figures stood in robes, discussing the implications of the current state of affairs. The third son of this clan knew that if there's unrest among the people and taxes aren't paid on time, then the reign of the empire will have problems and will suffer. That is why the imperial family provides us with huge amounts of money, elixirs, manuals, and martial masters. The man in the orange robe continued, his words echoing in the fortress. Young Yinshin stood before the group, the desolate fortress looming behind him. His expression was stern as he spoke of the tasks ahead. Young Yinshin detailed the consequences for martial artists disrupting normal lives. The crowd listened intently as the grim decree was delivered, heads would be severed. The third son of this clan looked up, his expression unreadable as he listened to the terms. Young Yinshin cleared his throat, preparing to continue with the instructions. He explained that this was where they would be staying for now. Young Yinshin gestured towards the accommodations, detailing the arrangements. He concluded with a wish of good fortune to all those present. Elsewhere, the desolate fortress stood against the night sky, a silent promise of trials to come. He heard the distinct sound of the door sliding open. The third son sat cross-legged on his bed, lost in thought. Had it truly been a week already? He mused that he was getting assigned later than he expected. The young man remained still, contemplating his future assignment. Young Yinshin stood at the doorway. He asked if he may enter. The door slid open with a soft click, revealing Young Yinshin's surprised expression. Young Yinshin stood before the third son, inquiring as to what was the matter. Young Yinshin's expression shifted, relaying that it had been decided. They were going to the Radiant Demon Squad, a combat squad. The third son listened intently, his gaze unwavering as he processed the information. Young Yinshin asked if he had heard the rumors, then asked what rumors. The narration box explained that the 17 combat squad captains under the Divine Sword Squad fought each other to take in new warriors. A brutal battle unfolded, each warrior vying for dominance and the right to recruit new talent. A blade gleams, reflecting the light as it's drawn. A question hangs in the air. Were they sparring with each other? One man sits cross-legged on the bed, asking if they spar with each other. The other confirms it. The man explains that they need to recruit the White Qilin and the Lightning Genius. The man with the headband smirks, a finger raised to his cheek. The next day, the scene shifts to the arena of the Radiant Demon Squad. The arena is vast, filled with figures in white uniforms. He stands with the man who spoke of recruiting, observing the scene. The members of the Radiant Demon Squad stand in formation. The squad members are described as cute by an unseen observer. The Radiant Demon Squad captain, Ma Jin, is introduced with a fiery intensity. Ma Jin looms over the third son and the other man, his expression wild. Talks of Ma Jin's strength among the squad captains proved true. Seeing him in person confirmed the rumors. His face contorted, Ma Jin stared down at the third son. You, lightning genius. The third son stood firm, flanked by 2 squad members. He met Ma Jin's gaze without flinching. Ma Jin's eye twitched, a vein throbbing in his temple. His intensity was palpable. The third son's expression remained stoic, betraying no hint of fear or unease. A smirk played on Ma Jin's lips, a hint of cruelty in his expression. He continued, his voice laced with menace. I see you have a backbone. People like you don't die easily. The third son stood tall, unfazed by the captain's words. The other squad members remained silent and watchful. Combat squads under the desolate Fortress Divine Sword Squad are like sects in the Central Plains. The 2 of you will learn martial arts and execute missions. Rows of squad members stood at attention. They were all the third son's seniors. The Radiant Demon Squad was filled with experienced warriors, each a veteran of countless battles. The words hung in the air, Captain Ma. He raises his hand, eager to know more about his new squad. The third son awaits an answer, his expression hopeful. He asks if learning martial arts in the Radiant Demon Squad means everyone shares their techniques. The third son's eyes widen as he poses the question. Ma Jin replies that the martial arts one learns by oneself belong to them. The third son is told that only the martial arts of the Radiant Demon Squad will be taught there. The third son realizes he'll be learning the famous Radiant Demon arts, but survival requires hard work. The third son recalls having heard of the Radiant Demon arts before. Ma Jin explains that the Radiant Demon Squad is one of the most famous among the 17 squads. A fierce battle unfolds, swords clashing amidst a flurry of movement. Because they were able to fight the Plum Blossom swordsmen without any casualties. That incident gave even more credibility to the gossip mongers, saying that the desolate fortress is the strongest in the world. A gathering of warriors stood beneath fluttering banners, their swords gleaming in the light. The text explained that while the desolate fortress was affiliated with the imperial family, attacks on its martial artists did not constitute treason. A man with his hair in a bun stood with 2 others, emphasizing the need to learn and grow stronger. A disembodied voice questioned why attacks on the desolate fortress weren't considered treason. He looked on, his expression unreadable as the implications of the desolate fortress's status sunk in. A scarred face showed the harsh realities of the martial world, where strength dictated the rules. The text spoke of eccentrics in the Jianghu, many of whom had lost their minds to demonic arts. A crazed old man with long white hair screamed, a testament to the dangers of forbidden knowledge. The text continued, explaining that some were exceptionally skilled in mobility arts and could challenge government officials. Figures moved through the mountains, a reminder of those who escaped to the wilderness. The scarred man's face returned, the text stating that they were like government officials, but fought martial artists. Therefore, the text concluded, implying a deeper understanding of the desolate fortress's role. A stern warning echoes, declaring that weakness invites death. He swallows hard, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on him. An older man looks off into the distance, his expression unreadable. The man recounts a tale of someone slashed by the Namgung, strongest swordsman. The group stands in anticipation, ready to provide more details. He acknowledges the king-style sword arts, his brow furrowed in thought. The scene shifts, focusing on the lower half of a figure in traditional attire. A voice expresses fear, hinting at the terrifying nature of what was witnessed. A man with striking white hair and piercing blue eyes stares intently. The third son's gaze is intense, his expression unreadable as he contemplates the information. The king-style sword arts are described as one of the strongest styles of swordsmanship, a supreme martial art. The Namgung strongest swordsman is said to be the strongest martial master of China. He smirked, a glint in his eye as he considered the challenge ahead. The third son of this clan had fought as skilled master and returned alive. All right then. He stepped forward, his resolve hardening with each stride. One of the men suggested they start with the lightning genius, his voice laced with anticipation. The man with the blue headband heard that their swift sword arts were pretty exceptional. A confident smile played on the third son's lips as he prepared to demonstrate his skills. The man with dark hair stated that they should take a look at the swift sword arts. The man with dark hair walked forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Fingers tightened around the hilt of his sword, preparing to draw the weapon. With a determined step, the man prepared to unleash his sword arts. A group of onlookers watched with anticipation, eager to witness the upcoming display of skill. The two men looked on with a mixture of surprise and apprehension, sensing the intensity of the moment. He stands, a faint blue glow emanating from his form. The ground beneath the other man's feet crackles with energy. A faint smile plays on the blond man's lips. His grip tightens on the hilt of his sword. Jung Yinshin's eyes narrow, observing his opponent. The man in blue takes a step forward, the sound echoing in the space. The man announces, "I'm Chung Myung. I was born and raised in Xiangyang." Chung Myung stands ready, his sword glinting in the light. Jung Yinshin replies, "I am Jung Yinshin, and I'm from Xinya." Chung Myung simply states, "I see." Chung Myung's expression is one of amusement. Jung Yinshin wonders if such a place truly exists. A training ground bustled with activity, students practicing their forms. Chung Myung observed, noting that one could feel the wind being produced, even by a 10-year-old using the tri-sword technique. The third son of this clan moved with precision, his blade slicing through the air. Chung Myung mused that one could discern how someone swings their sword. The third son's eyes narrowed, sensing something in the air. Chung Myung remarked on the talent it took to reach this level at such a young age. The third son's talent was undeniable. Chung Myung continued to watch, a slight smile playing on his lips. The third son's talent with swords was clear for all to see. He steels himself, a quiet resolve hardening his gaze. His grip tightens on the hilt, knuckles white against the dark metal. The sword seems to hum in anticipation, ready to be unleashed. The man with gray hair murmurs, sensing the sword's resonance. Sword resonance? Jung Yinshin watches with a keen eye, recognizing the power gathering. The third son settles into his stance, the sword held ready. He draws the blade, the movement precise and practiced. The tip of the sword glints, a promise of deadly intent. Chung Myung laughs, a hint of anticipation in his eyes as he watches the third son. Focus. The third son's stance is perfect, every muscle coiled and ready. His eyes narrow, the moment of action drawing near. He breathes deeply, preparing himself for the technique he is about to unleash. The third son focuses, his senses heightened. I can feel my opponent's breathing with my energy detection. He stands poised, the air around him shimmering with barely contained power. His expression hardens, resolve etched into every line of his face. His eyes glow with an intense, focused light, burning with inner energy. Power gathers beneath his feet, the ground itself seeming to crackle with anticipation. A faint smile plays on his lips as he prepares to strike, confident in his skill. The sword gleams, ready to be used for his sword arts. He grips the hilt tightly, his knuckles white with the force of his hold. The blade sings as he begins to move, a blur of motion too fast to follow. Arcs of pure energy erupt from the sword, crackling and spitting with raw power. His face contorts with the effort, the technique straining him to his limits. He focuses, his eyes narrowed, the sword held ready to strike. When did he raise his sword? A voice echoes in the mind. The third son's blade meets Chung Myung's, the force of the impact reverberating. Power gathers at the foot, ready to propel the next move. The ground cracks under the pressure, energy surging. Okay, a voice thinks he's a martial master who survived against the strongest swordsman in Namgung after all. The third son lunges forward, his sword aimed with deadly precision. If I take that into consideration, this is a voice considers. The swords clash again, sparks flying as the two warriors test each other's strength. More feasible than I thought, a voice considers. His eyes burn with intensity, focused on the battle. The sound of the strike echoes, the battle's intensity rising. He lunged, his sword a silver flash against the dim light. His footfalls echoed, each step measured and deliberate. Chung Myung stood firm, his back to the unseen threat. The blade whistled through the air, a deadly arc of steel. Chung Myung parried the blow, sparks flying from the impact. The clash of steel resonated, a blinding flash at the point of contact. Chung Myung's eyes widened, a bead of sweat trickling down his brow. The third son's gaze narrowed, a predatory glint in his eyes. A gasp escaped Chung Myung's lips, his expression shifting to alarm. The third son stood poised, ready to strike, his presence commanding. He disappeared. The air crackled, a residual echo of his sudden departure. He senses the attack, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. The third son's blade flashes, a silver streak against the light. Chung Myung parries the blow, his own sword meeting the others with a resounding crash. His eyes narrow, focused on the incoming attack. A smirk plays on the third son's lips as he presses his assault. The swords clash again, a whirlwind of motion and steel. The third son's attack intensifies, his movements becoming even more rapid. His eyes widen, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Energy explodes from Chung Myung, a visible aura surrounding him. The force of the impact sends shockwaves through the air. The third son's cloak billows as he is forced back. The two warriors are locked in a fierce struggle, neither willing to yield. He lowered his head, his silver hair falling around his face. The clash of steel echoed through the training hall. Chung Myung and the third son continued their furious exchange, neither giving an inch. The air crackled with energy. Dust swirled around their feet as Chung Myung and the third son moved with blinding speed. The onlookers watched with bated breath, their faces etched with shock. Their eyes widened, unable to believe the intensity of the battle. The third son's gaze hardened, sweat beading on his brow. His grip tightened on his sword. The third son faced Chung Myung, determination blazing in his eyes. As expected of a noble race, the third son's skill was undeniable. The third son held his sword ready, his blue eyes focused. A hand grips the hilt of his sword, the blade glowing with power. The third son prepares to unleash the limit-releasing technique on his sword. He considers the translation change for accuracy, a slight furrow in his brow. The third son stands among onlookers, his sword held aloft, ready to strike. The crowd's expressions are a mix of shock and concern. One wonders aloud why they are making such faces. Chung Myung's eyes widen slightly, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. Chung Myung stands his ground, observing the third son with a keen eye. The third son looks expectantly at Chung Myung. He asks what he thinks of the fight. Chung Myung's expression is one of surprise, his eyes wide with shock. The third son admits he knows Chung Myung went easy on him and asks him to be honest. Chung Myung hesitates, considering his response to the third son's request. Chung Myung asks the third son how old he said he was, his expression unreadable. He wondered aloud if his age mattered in the assessment of his skills. The third son reasoned that their enemies wouldn't hold back due to their youth. A man with white hair looked on, utterly shocked by the revelation. The third son believed that discussing age was meaningless, given his already short life. The crowd murmured, their expressions a mix of disbelief and awe at the third son's statement. The crowd considered the implications of someone so skilled at such a young age. The man with white hair had never seen anything like the third son's abilities. Chung Myung observed that the third son possessed instinct honing arts from birth. The third son recalled being the most talented person in his city. The crowd listened intently, absorbing the weight of his words. The third son's gaze intensified, his expression unreadable. The man with the scar looked on in disbelief, his mouth agape. A stern gaze pierces through the panel, a scar etched deep. Chung Myung smiles, his fingers carefully adjusting the grip on his sword. A small chuckle escapes him as he prepares. The third son of this clan appears lost in thought, his expression unreadable as he considers the situation. The glint of steel catches the light, a promise of conflict hanging in the air. The two figures stood on the training grounds, the air thick with anticipation. Laughter erupted as they sparred, the sounds echoing through the training grounds. A surge of blue energy crackled in his palm, ready to be unleashed. Chung Myung watched the third son of this clan, a thoughtful expression on his face. The training continued, each step precise and deliberate. Chung Myung remarked that it was commendable that he was still standing. The third son of his clan was told to go back and solidify what he'd learned. He agreed, his voice barely a whisper. Chung Myung watched him, his expression unreadable as the training concluded. The sound of training echoes through the training grounds. Chung Myung observes the third son of this clan, who stands ready. The third son's expression is focused, his eyes narrowed in concentration. Chung Myung notes that he is done too, questioning if he understood the crux of the steps. It's to think and act in a seamless manner. The third son listens intently, his gaze fixed on Chung Myung. Chung Myung explains that there's always a way to move regardless of the situation. The true crux of the Radiant Demon Arts is to move seamlessly without disrupting the path of your attacks. You must now understand the deeper meaning of the path of attacks. The third son ponders the deeper meaning of the path of attacks as Chung Myung looks on. Chung Myung decides it would be better and faster to show it to him. He stood before the group, the courtyard quiet in anticipation of his demonstration. Chung Myung approached a stone lantern, his gaze intense as he examined it closely. His feet remained planted, the only movement the subtle shift of his weight. The third son watched with a stoic expression, his eyes narrowed in concentration. A surge of energy emanated from Chung Myung's hand, a visible manifestation of his inner power. The Radiant Demon Arts began to take form, energy crackling around the stone lantern. The assembled disciples watched in awe as the demonstration unfolded before them. Chung Myung's face was etched with determination, his focus absolute. A guttural sound escaped his lips as he channeled his energy. The stone lantern began to crack and crumble under the force of the Radiant Demon Arts. His fist clenched, the power of the Radiant Demon Arts concentrated in his hand. The third son's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as he witnessed the display. He relaxed completely, gathering his strength for the coming demonstration. The third son of this clan stared ahead, his expression unreadable as he prepared to strike. His hand tightened, the knuckles turning white as he focused his inner energy. His eyes narrowed, a fierce determination burning within them as he channeled his power. The air crackled with energy as the Radiant Demon Arts began to manifest. With a surge of power, he unleashed the technique, his fist a blur of motion. The fist hurtled forward, a concentrated force aimed at the stone structure. The impact was immediate and devastating, stone exploding outwards. Fragments of stone scattered in all directions, propelled by the force of the blow. The stone structure lay in ruins, a testament to the power of the Radiant Demon Arts. Chung Myung watched with a critical eye, assessing the effectiveness of the demonstration. The disciples looked on in awe, murmuring their astonishment at the display of strength. He stood atop the stone formation, disciples arrayed below, observing the demonstration. Chung Myung observed, explaining that the strongest attack comes at the perfect timing. He continued, stating that following a perfect path of attack would unleash the most powerful strike. Chung Myung emphasized the need to grasp the timing of unleashing their strength, though he wasn't asking them to do it immediately. Chung Myung stated that this is something they'll have to learn throughout their entire lives, not something to master after seeing once. The third son listened intently, a hint of doubt flickering across his face. He thought to himself that it was something he had to learn throughout his entire life, but he felt like he could do it right now. The third son stood with his hands clasped, determination etched on his face as Chung Myung watched him. Chung Myung wondered if he was going to try doing it. The third son stood before a stone lantern, the essence of core energy being the great nature. The third son took a deep breath, his expression resolute as he prepared to act. He considered that just following its lead would be sufficient. He steadies himself, the sword held firmly in his grasp. The words body-sword unification appear, a testament to his goal. He whispers to himself, urging himself to relax and take it slowly. A low hum emanates as he focuses his inner energy. The third son stands before a glowing structure, his sword at the ready. He takes a step forward, the air around him crackling with energy. The structure glows brighter, responding to his presence. Energy coalesces around the structure, forming intricate patterns. He raises his sword, preparing to channel the energy. His grip tightens, determination etched on his face. The structure hums with power, ready to unleash its force. He moves forward, the sword poised to strike, ready to unify body and blade. The force of the blow reverberated, shaking the very foundations. Stone cracked and crumbled under the immense pressure. He stood amidst the shattered remains, his form radiating power. Dust and debris exploded outwards, a testament to his strength. The third son surveyed the wreckage, the training dummies reduced to rubble. A faint smile played on his lips, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. He reflected on his progress. I've understood the deeper meaning of the path of attacks. The ground lay scarred, bearing witness to the power he now wielded. I've learned all of the Radiant Demon Arts. The third son held his sword, examining the blade with a critical eye. He knew his training was far from over. I just need to continue training to be able to use it in a real fight from now on. Determination hardened his gaze, a promise of future battles to come. A group of onlookers watched him, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension. He wonders what he is doing, staring at the symbol on his sleeve. The third son admits he showed an unsightly side of himself, since it's his first time trying this. He grips the hilt of his sword, knowing he still needs to experience many more. He knows he needs real fights before he can use it properly. The third son thinks that normal practice like this won't work. The students watch him, wondering what he is doing. He thanks them for their teachings. The older man watches with narrowed eyes. The older man crosses his arms, a scar visible on his face. The older man thinks he has to think about how he should teach him from now on. The third son walks away from the training grounds. The third son looks determined. The uniform of the desolate fortress, a symbol of discipline and order. The next day, the fortress stood silent, unaware of the rumors about to spread within its walls. Whispers carried on the wind spoke of a clash. Did you hear that our seniors had a huge fight with the heavenly squad? He listened intently, his expression thoughtful as the rumors reached his ears. The man with long black hair looked up, surprised. What? He asked, seeking clarification. The third son of his clan sat perched on the fortress wall. Isn't the desolate fortress pretty strict with its rules? The man with long black hair leaned in, curious. Why did they fight? He inquired. The third son simply replied, well, the rumors painted a chaotic scene. One of the heavenly squad members picked a fight at the restaurant. The man with long black hair seemed unconvinced. They fought because of something like that? He questioned. The third son looked off into the distance. You don't know what the Murim is like. This is its true face. The third son continued, explaining the volatile nature of the Murim. Something that doesn't seem like a big deal could provoke someone to raise their sword against you. In this world, the streets place great value on the process of stopping that sword and winning in that situation. He wondered if the current situation was actually better than before. The thought of the seniors of the desolate fortress getting angry over a newbie was amusing. The man with hands clasped thought they were angry because someone insulted the Radiant Demon Squad. Something was brewing. He realized this could be an opportunity. If he wanted to get the fruit of the world tree, which all the noble races of this world worship, he needed to accomplish something and would need help from others. While the best way to gain the trust of a martial artist is to owe each other our life, it is not a bad idea to make a good impression. He stood up abruptly. The man with hands clasped agreed, after some thinking, that what he said was right. He thought the seniors were fighting because of him. He couldn't let that go. He'd go pay them a visit. He wondered. He continued to train, the sounds of exertion echoing around him. One of the senior members exclaimed that he knew the trainee was chivalrous and knew the code of martial artists. The senior member watched the training, his expression intense. A question hung in the air. Was doing something like that considered chivalrous? The sounds of training continued. The trainees continued their exercises, watched by the senior members. The scene showed a close-up of one of the trainees, sweat dripping from his brow. One of the senior members remarked that they were newbies and there were no lessons today. Another senior member stated that they were working. The trainee with long black hair looked determined. One of the senior members said that there wasn't a need for the trainee to train so hard while still wearing white. The trainee replied no, it's because they're wearing white that they should do that, and that's a really desirable attitude. The martial artists stood in formation, awaiting further instruction from their seniors. Chung Myung, observing the group, inquired if anyone had encountered problems during their training. The third son stepped forward, requesting spar. Chung Myung responded, telling him to choose anyone. He clarified that he did not wish to spar against the Radiant Demon Squad. The third son declared his desire to spar against the Heavenly Squad. His expression remained stoic, betraying no hint of his true intentions. The other martial artists reacted with surprise and murmurs at his bold request. Chung Myung dismissed their concerns, stating that there was no need to get worked up over what happened yesterday. The third son responded that he was not worked up, though his request suggested otherwise. He added that he would like to see the heavenly sword arts, which he had admired for a long time, in person. His eyes narrowed, a hint of determination flickering within them. Chung Myung retorted that it was too late for him to say something like that, implying that he was also worked up. Even so, it wasn't bad to see him get worked up because of his seniors. He would like to spar and show that the Radiant Demon Arts are a great martial art. The third son of his clan clasped his hands together, requesting permission. Captain, please allow me to do that. He would be able to gain fighting experience with the... He thought that he would be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. The captain stated that they had neither learned the same kind of martial arts as the Heavenly Squad, nor have they fought in a battle together before. Chung Myung said that while it might be a spar, there's no reason for them to go easy on him. The third son of his clan grinned, stating that was exactly what he was hoping for. His seniors. The group of men looked on with shocked expressions. They were speechless. That spirit is befitting of a martial artist of the desolate fortress. He would love to see what you're like after you grow up, if you're able to survive the fight somehow. He stood surrounded, the voices of his peers echoing around him. They believed in his potential. The man with the scar on his face seemed to be in deep thought. He raised his hand to his face. The man declared that he would pass the message on to the Heavenly Squad. The third son of his clan clenched his fist, determination etched on his face. The scene shifts to the Heavenly Squad arena. Murmurs fill the air as disciples gather. The crowd thickens, anticipation building with each step. The disciples discuss the upcoming fight. One notes that a white robe is challenging a blue robe, a guidance fight for learning. The crowd wonders how many bouts the challenger will last. Another disciple speculates that the white robe will last about 10 bouts against the blue robe. One of the men looks up, while another strokes his chin thoughtfully. One of the disciples voices his doubt, stating he can't see that happening. A man in a white robe stands with his sword, ready to fight. Heavenly Squad Captain Han Chulmak observes the scene. He bore a stern expression, the scar on his face prominent. Two figures stood observing, their faces unreadable in the dim light. The man with the ponytail touched his ear, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. A voice declared that if the brat lasted 10 bouts, he'd receive one of the Heavenly Squad's elixirs. The group watched on, their expressions a mix of anticipation and concern as the stakes were raised. The man with the scar stood with his arms crossed, as the other man questioned if that was too much to place. The man with the ponytail's eyes widened, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. The desolate warned him not to provoke him, his gaze intense and unwavering. The man with the scar questioned how that was frivolous, given the honor of the Radiant Demon Squad and the Heavenly Squad was on the line. With a sigh, the man accepted the terms, the weight of the challenge settling upon him. The man with the scar stood tall, the other man seated, a simple good sealing the agreement. The man with the eye patch stated that as the leader of a group, they ought to trust their own people. The sound of tearing echoes as something gives way. A close-up reveals a face marked by a prominent scar. The heavy thud of footsteps reverberates through the area. A figure in white robe steps forward. "Your name is Young Yinshin?" he asks. Young Yinshin, from the Radiant Demon Squad, stands ready. He prepares himself for the upcoming challenge. The text explains that people start as a white robe warrior before advancing to a blue robe warrior. A blue robe warrior stands with his hand on his sword. The text continues, explaining that not everyone becomes a blue robe, and some take over 10 years to achieve the rank. Someone states they have trained in the heavenly sword arts for 20 years. The warrior's expression is stern as he reflects on the nature of swords. It is said that the swords of masters do have eyes. The man's eyes narrowed, a fierce determination hardening his features. Han Chulmak made it clear that he would show no mercy in this duel, and Yinshin better keep that in mind. The older man slowly drew his sword, the sound echoing in the training hall. A surge of blue energy crackled around the blade. The energy intensified, bathing the training hall in an ethereal blue light as Yinshin watched. The blue light trailed behind the sword as Han Chulmak prepared his stance. The energy coalesced around the blade, a palpable tension filling the air. Han Chulmak's expression remained stern, his focus absolute as he faced Yinshin. He steeled himself, ready to face whatever came next. He resolved to throw away unnecessary thoughts. No matter what kind of style Han Chulmak used, he would simply use his own style of martial arts. He offered the first strike, a gesture of either confidence or arrogance. Han Chulmak held his sword ready, a bead of sweat trickling down his face. Yinshin's eyes narrowed, a silent invitation to begin the deadly dance. The air crackled with anticipation as Yinshin prepared his technique. A surge of power emanated from him, distorting the very air. The clash of steel was imminent, a storm of energy about to erupt. Blades blurred, a dance of death painted in streaks of light. The swords met, a blinding flash illuminating the intensity of the duel. Han Chulmak's stance faltered, the force of the blow threatening to overwhelm him. A look of shock crossed Han Chulmak's face as he felt the impact. Yinshin pressed his advantage, his eyes burning with determination. He moved with blinding speed, leaving his opponent struggling to react. The blade flashed, a testament to his honed skill and deadly intent. The air crackled with the force of the blow, a shockwave rippling outwards. Han Chulmak raised his arm, barely managing to deflect the strike. The force of the impact sent them both skidding across the training ground. The onlookers watched in stunned silence, unable to fully comprehend the speed. One of the observers recognized the technique. That's the speed possessed by a white robe. Han Chulmak's eyes narrowed, a bead of sweat trickling down his weathered face. The narrator mused on the display of skill. Seeing that level of skill at that age inevitably takes away one's breath. However, with young Yinshin's skills, if he doesn't make use of this opportunity, then he won't be able to win. Yinshin's expression remained focused, his grip tightening on his weapon. He pressed his attack, his movements a blur of motion and lethal precision. He clashed his blades with Han Chulmak, the force of impact reverberating outwards. Han Chulmak grits his teeth, the pressure of the attack bearing down on him. He presses forward, his eyes focused and unwavering as he attacks. Han Chulmak struggles, sweat beading on his brow as he parries the relentless strikes. The sounds of clashing metal echo through the training grounds. The limit-releasing technique, a rational approach to power, begins to manifest. Strands of hair whip around as the fighters move with increasing speed. He thinks to himself that he has grown stronger since entering this place. His grip tightens on the sword, knuckles white with effort. He reflects on his physical body, trained with the Jung clan's movement art and the principles of martial arts. The sword is held firmly, ready to strike with precision. The fight continues, a whirlwind of motion and steel as Yinshin and Han Chulmik exchange blows. He takes a step forward, his foot a blur of motion. The text explains that taking a step forward and turning with core energy creates rotational force. The rotational force intensifies, a vortex of energy gathering around his advancing leg. He brings his sword around, the blade slicing through the air with incredible speed. The force of the swing sends energy scattering, a testament to his power. A group of onlookers watches the fight, their expressions a mix of awe and concern. Yinshin faces Han Chulmik, their swords locked in a fierce exchange. Han Chulmik grits his teeth, struggling to maintain his ground against the onslaught. The strange child continues his relentless assault, his movements fluid and deadly. He thinks to himself that he has learned another move. Han Chulmik's face contorts in pain and effort, the blade pressed close to his face. The sword cuts closer, a visible sign of the intense pressure. He unleashes a powerful strike, the force of it creating a visible shockwave. The impact reverberates through the structure, shaking the very foundations. The blade hangs suspended, a testament to the force behind the clash. He continues his assault, each strike carrying immense power and precision. Han Chulmik grits his teeth, struggling to withstand the relentless onslaught. The pressure mounts, sweat beading on Han Chulmik's brow as he desperately tries to defend. Yinshin's expression hardens, his eyes focused intently on his opponent. Han Chulmik's grip tightens on his weapon, his knuckles white with strain. He lets out a strained breath, preparing for the next exchange. The sounds of the battle echo through the hall, a symphony of steel and desperation. The onlookers gasp, witnessing the sheer power and intensity of the fight between Yinshin and Han Chulmik. The crowd looked on, their expressions a mix of shock and anticipation. The announcement echoed through the arena. The white robe had won. A hush fell over the crowd as the third son stood silently, contemplating the victory. He lowered his sword, the weight of the battle still heavy in his stance. The third son examined his blade, a silent acknowledgement of the fight's intensity. Han Chulmik approached, a complicated expression on his face as he looked at the victor. The third son thought to himself that he had gotten lucky in the fight. He knew that if they were to fight again, the results would be different. The third son expressed his gratitude for the opportunity to witness such high-level swordsmanship. He sheathed his sword, the sound echoing in the silent arena. Han Chulmik's face was shown in detail. Han Chulmik stood tall, his presence imposing as the third son approached. The third son's hand tightened around the hilt of his sword. Han Chulmik admitted he was surprised by the sword's trajectory and rotational force. The third son listened intently to the praise. The crowd marveled at his martial prowess. The crowd exclaimed that he had incredible talent for the sword, calling him the lightning genius, young Yinshin. The third son walked away, the crowd's words echoing in his mind. The crowd commented that the Radiant Demon Squad had found a treasure, envious of his abilities. Han Chulmik listened to the crowd's praise, a thoughtful expression on his face. The third son closed his eyes, deep in thought. He considered his martial prowess, which was unfathomable for someone so young. He decided to name his new technique Energy Accumulation Discharge. Han Chulmik watched the third son, a slight smile playing on his lips. He holds out a black box, its surface adorned with intricate gold patterns. The third son of this clan looks on, his expression unreadable as he awaits the offering. He opens the box, a soft click echoing in the air as he peers inside, questioning what it is. Han Chulmik watches him, a slight smile playing on his lips as he anticipates the reaction. Inside the box rests a single, radiant golden orb, an elixir of the Heavenly Squad. The third son stares at the elixir, as Han Chulmik declares that it is now his. The golden orb glows, promising power and potential to the one who now possesses it. Elsewhere, a lone figure stood atop a tiled roof, overlooking the city. Inside a building, a man with slick-back hair watched with a stern expression. Two figures in blue robes stood guard, their presence adding to the sense of anticipation. One of the men seated on the steps muttered, impressed by the display of skill. "Damn, he's such a monster." Zen Sword Demon Beck Mirio sat calmly, observing the events unfolding before her. The woman listening intently remarked on his character. "Even so, he's hardworking, humble, and polite." She continued, noting his keen insight. "He's also good at seeing through martial arts." The blonde-haired man, reclining casually, added his observation. "That's definitely talent we've never seen before." Beck Mirio watched, a subtle intensity in her gaze. "When I use a technique while sparring." The man with long blue hair could somehow apply the same principle in a different posture. In addition, the way he executes it is much more precise than others. The third son's fist glows with power as he prepares to strike. Beck Mirio admits that she would hate to use exclusive martial arts in front of him. The man with the blue bandana believes he's got some kind of innate talent for reinterpreting martial arts. It's as if he learned the martial arts a long time ago, the man with black hair executes it much more precisely. Han Chulmak thinks that he's a real monster, observing the third son's skill. The third son sits in a meditative pose, preparing himself for what is to come. Han Chulmak doesn't know how much he'll be able to draw out of the elixir. Usually, people would absorb about 60 to 70% of it, but depending on the situation, it could be even less than that. The man with short hair warns that if you act recklessly because you feel like you're absorbing less, you could damage your energy core or blood vessels, so don't be too obsessed with absorbing it. To consume an elixir allows it to flow into your core energy. Han Chulmak watches as the third son prepares himself, ready to assist. The third son brings the elixir to his lips. His expression hardens as he prepares to ingest the substance. He feels energy increasing as the elixir enters his body. The energy surges within him. The elixir begins to take effect, radiating from his core. His eyes are closed as he focuses on the energy flowing through him. The energy continues to build, swirling around him. The empty elixir container lies discarded. Han Chulmak watches intently, his expression unreadable. The third son is now surrounded by a powerful aura. He is a sight to behold, his features sharp and focused. Someone observes from afar, noting that the process has begun. The third son remains still, seated on the steps, as the power takes hold. The sun sets, casting long shadows across the landscape. Energy crackles around a central sphere, a visual testament to the elixir's potency. The energy expands outward, a radiant bloom of power. Tendrils of light writhe and twist, showcasing the raw force now coursing through him. Bathed in golden light, the third son is the epicenter of this transformation. Even with his eyes closed, the intensity of the energy is palpable. A bead of sweat trickles down his face, a sign of the immense strain. Han Chulmak watches with a keen eye, his expression unreadable. Han Chulmak notes to himself that the third son's absorption is remarkably natural, requiring no intervention. He stands, eyes closed, as power radiates from him. The third son's expression remains serene, despite the obvious surge of energy. The room around him seems to shimmer with the overflow. Han Chulmak watches the third son, observing the effects of the elixir. The energy continues to build, visible even around his fingertips. His eyes remain closed, focused on controlling the power within. The third son sits in lotus position, hands glowing with golden light. Han Chulmak sighs, impressed by the youth's accomplishment. The newly obtained core energy seems pretty strong. Han Chulmak thinks to himself, surprised, I didn't expect him to successfully absorb the whole elixir. The observer notes, not only that, he did it without any help. Now, with more energy, he could detect presences he hadn't before. His seniors were surrounding this place. The third son looked up, a thoughtful expression on his face as he considered the implications of this newfound awareness. He wondered if they were protecting him because he would become completely vulnerable while absorbing the elixir. He realized he was getting protected while he absorbed the elixir. Han Chulmak stood nearby, observing him. The third son's expression remained neutral, but a flicker of suspicion crossed his eyes as he pondered the situation. He turned slightly, his gaze distant as he continued to process the implications of his enhanced senses and the actions of those around him. He wondered why everyone was being so nice to him, a hint of skepticism coloring his thoughts. Elsewhere, the Radiant Demon squad members declared they weren't taking special care of him. This was done for everyone in the squad. It becomes something natural once you risk your life a few times in the Jianghu. The Radiant Demon squad members stood amidst a scene of carnage, their expressions grim as they surveyed the aftermath of a battle. The stronger you become, the better it is for the Radiant Demon squad as well, they stated. He sat in silence, gathering his thoughts, a period of reflection. The third son of his clan opened his eyes, a newfound power coursing through him. The night was dark, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. He remained still, seated in the lotus position, his mind focused. The third son's body trembled slightly as he absorbed the elixir's power. He felt a surge of energy within him, far surpassing what he had known before. He was eager to test the limits of his newfound martial arts prowess. The third son walked out of the building, ready to test his strength. Beck Mirio watched him approach, a question forming in her mind. She wondered if he was truly the Zen sword demon. Beck Mirio sighed softly, her expression unreadable. Beck Mirio asked if he had come out to train because he couldn't take it anymore, to which he simply replied, yeah. She admits to realizing something after seeing his fight. The third son listens intently to what she has to say. It's just a small move, he thinks to himself. Beck Mirio apologizes if he plans to train, but suggests a spar. He replies that he can train alone anytime. The third son seems to be contemplating her offer. Beck Mirio repeats her name. The third son finds her offer sufficient. Elsewhere, Beck Mirio and the third son stand in a courtyard, ready to spar. He prepares to make the first move, drawing his sword. Beck Mirio watches him, her expression unreadable. She makes a gesture, inviting him to attack. He grips the hilt of his sword, eyes narrowed in fierce concentration. With a burst of speed, he unleashes a powerful strike. Beck Mirio remains calm, her expression unreadable as the blade approaches. The sword cuts through the air, a flash of steel against the blue sky. The third son presses his attack, his movements swift and precise. Her eyes lock onto his, a flicker of something unreadable within them. The third son's sword clashes against an unseen force, sparks flying. A surge of purple energy emanates from Beck Mirio's hand. The energy coalesces, forming a swirling vortex of power. Beck Mirio unleashes the attack, the purple energy surging towards her opponent. The energy slams into the third son, a blinding flash of violet light. He is sent flying backward, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He is sent hurtling backwards, the force of the blow immense. Elsewhere, the grandson of the former divine sword squad leader of the desolate fortress watches the unfolding events. Her eyes narrow, focused on the battle before her. Beck Mirio prepares another attack, a dark energy coalescing in her palm. The energy shifts, turning a vibrant blue as she channels her power. The dark energy pulses, ready to be unleashed. The blue energy intensifies, crackling with raw power as Beck Mirio prepares to strike. She unleashes the energy, sending it hurtling towards her opponent. The blast of dark energy streaks across the battlefield. The third son is struck, the force of the impact visible on his face. The grandson watches as the third son is blasted away, landing heavily on the ground. He stands, hands glowing with contained power, ready to unleash another attack. Beck Mirio stares intently, a dark aura swirling around her, a hint of concern in her eyes. You're really scary. The dark energy crackles, a tangible force ready to be unleashed. The third son of this clan remains focused, his gaze unwavering as he prepares his next move. A swordsman that has learned the radiant demon arts can't only use swords. The one-inch strike is very useful in close combat. In order to deal with the energies mixed in the body, Beck Mirio unleashes the one-inch strike against a hulking figure, a burst of energy erupting on contact. You need to first destroy the enhanced protection energy. After using core energy in the burst discharge to increase tension, the one-inch strike really becomes more efficient. Beck Mirio focuses, her hands glowing with the concentrated power of the one-inch strike. The third son watches, his expression unreadable as he observes Beck Mirio's technique. Beck Mirio glances back at him, a confident smirk playing on her lips. Something even though I'm new here? Go on. Sensitivity to detecting energy had become heightened. The third son's expression remained unreadable. Beck Mirio observed, noting that the way he used his core energy had attracted her attention. Both remained silent, the air thick with anticipation. Had he been able to perceive the movement of her core energy? The third son of this clan questioned if she could perceive the movement of his core energy. Beck Mirio denied it. She then asked how he was able to know the movement of his core energy. He explained that he couldn't see the core energy within her body, only the flow of the burst discharge. The Zen Sword Demon found it hard to believe the waves of core energy generated on the outside. Beck Mirio considered his words, her expression thoughtful. The third son of this clan stated that even purple row martial masters may not have energy detection skills of that level. A group of warriors stood ready, their swords gleaming in the dim light. Beck Mirio admitted it was possible if it was him, and she would listen to his advice. The Zen Sword Demon stood with her hand on her hip, listening intently. She considered the implications, the Zen Sword Demon Beck Mirio mulling over the one-inch strike. The third son of this clan raised a hand, his expression unreadable as he spoke. Even as she was struck by a purple energy attack, the third son's words echoed in her mind. The energy crackled around her, a reminder that the puncturing technique might be more effective. Tendrils of purple energy lashed out, the force of the blow evident in its wake. The third son stood opposite her, his expression still unreadable as the energy dissipated. He challenged her, questioning if she thought he was incapable of using the puncturing technique. Beck Mirio countered, asking if he believed that was the reason she hadn't used it. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of defensiveness flickering across her face. The two stood apart, the tension palpable between them as the conversation hung in the air. The third son offered his apologies, admitting he might have said something unnecessary. Beck Mirio softened, accepting his apology and offering her thanks. She stood beside the third son, the tension of the moment lingering. Beck Mirio turned and walked away, her back to the third son. The third son watched her leave, his expression unreadable. The words hung in the air. The lightning genius figured out my martial arts. The third son inquired if Beck Mirio had ever told him about the origins of her martial arts. A voice boomed, questioning the crazy bullshit being spouted and why anyone would tell him anything. The man with a scar across his face questioned if it was that important. Beck Mirio wondered how he had figured it out then. The third son asked if it seemed as if he had figured out that she tweaked the lost martial arts, the heavenly demon sacred arts. Beck Mirio responded that it did seem like that. A close-up revealed the man with the scar's stoic expression. She listened as the third son of this clan spoke of someone special. The third son believed people like him only occasionally appear in the world. The man's robes rustled as he shifted his weight, his words carrying weight. Beck Mirio remained silent, listening intently to his assessment. The third son wondered aloud if that kid was truly special. Beck Mirio stood still, her expression unreadable as she listened. The third son believed he was definitely the future of the desolate fortress. The third son admitted he didn't know what others who hadn't seen him thought. He continued, stating that the advice he gives shouldn't be underestimated. Beck Mirio questioned if he was telling her to discuss the heavenly demon sacred arts with him. The third son confirmed that there were limits to learning it alone. The third son believed the correct thing to do right now would be to seek his help. He believes this person possesses the qualities of a martial arts founder. The third son explains that this individual can adapt any martial art to their own body. The third son's hand rests on the hilt of his sword, its blade shimmering with power. The third son emphasizes the importance of being a martial arts founder. Beck Mirio listens intently, her expression thoughtful as she considers his words. The third son states that if she feels bothered by it, it's probably just her. He adds that a small mission just appeared. The third son wants her to go as a team with the lightning genius and observe how he overcomes life and death situations. The third son wants Beck Mirio to see if he's really that special, as he hands her a scroll. The third son declares that within 5 years, he's the one that'll become the next Radiant Demon Squad captain. The third son's figure is seen running on rooftops, his movements swift and precise. Elsewhere, the sun sets over a distant mountain range, casting long shadows across the landscape. The thundering of hooves echoed as she rode onward, the landscape blurring past. The group pressed on, their mounts kicking up dust as they maintained a steady pace. Beck Mirio rode with purpose, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. Her expression remained stoic, betraying nothing of her thoughts. The third son's words echoed in her mind. Go see for yourself whether he's someone worthy of becoming your superior. The riders continued their journey, the road stretching before them. Jinping County Stage Station. As night fell, the group arrived at the Jinping County Stage Station, the buildings illuminated by lanterns. With a soft thud, someone dismounted. A man in green sighed. We rode on horses for 10 days. The blue-haired elf remained silent, his expression unreadable. Beck Mirio observed the scene, her gaze sharp and assessing. Recently, people bringing offerings to the Blood Flame cult have settled in a village. The Blood Flame cult routinely slaughters livestock and ruins crops. The village is located in Jinping County, south of Shaanxi. Han Schulmich stands at the head of the table, listening intently to the report. Usually, the Shaanxi branch could deal with them, but an elixir of the Manhwa sect was stolen. The man with the blue headband looked shocked at the news of the stolen elixir. Could the elixir stolen be the Plum Blossom Pill, on par with the Shaolin Temple's Great Revitalization Pill? Han Schulmich listens as one of his subordinates voices his suspicions. They don't have spare manpower and have asked the Desolate Fortress branch for help. Han Schulmich wants them all to go and deal with this. The group listens intently to Han Schulmich's orders. The Blood Flame cult is shown, a group of menacing figures. Han Schulmich expresses his frustration. They requested help long ago, yet they're only here now. Han Schulmich was going to act respectfully towards the Desolate Fortress since they're the sword of their empire. But how could they be so slow? He stood, a silent giant, as the group approached with ill-concealed disdain. The third son of this clan tilted his head, a silent question hanging in the air. The group stood their ground, the tension palpable as they faced Han Schulmich. Han Schulmich's face contorted in suppressed rage, his eyes narrowed with displeasure. The third son challenged, questioning their ability to even defeat that man. The voice dripped with scorn, emphasizing the perceived weakness of their numbers. The third son's question hung heavy, as Han Schulmich's expression darkened further. The official's words were laced with disdain, dismissing them as ignorant and inexperienced. Han Schulmich's anger flared, his face flushed as he listened to the disrespectful words. The outburst was a mix of disbelief and fury, questioning their audacity. The third son, unfazed by the outburst, ordered his group to end the confrontation quickly. The man's face contorted in rage, questioning the absurdity of the situation. His eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint appearing within them as he stared down at someone. A close-up reveals a stern expression, hinting at deep contemplation or simmering anger. Elsewhere, a figure is being restrained by two attendants, their faces etched with concern as they address someone with respect. The attendants walk away, leaving Warrior Young standing alone, his back turned to the viewer. Yin Shin confirms that he has learned how to block acupoints, his expression unreadable. The speaker contemplates whether calling him by his name feels respectful enough, his expression thoughtful. He declares that Yin Shin will be called a warrior, specifically Warrior Young. The speaker tells Warrior Young to do as he pleases, referring to him as a desolate fortress sacred warrior. The sound of footsteps echoes as the title of Fortress Sacred Warrior is emphasized. The title of Desolate Fortress Sacred Warrior is displayed prominently. He grinned, looking up at the sky with a carefree expression. The man's gaze shifted, his expression thoughtful and intense. Warrior Young stood shoulder to shoulder with another. The man stated that the Murim and the government don't interfere with each other. The man with white hair explained that when it comes to the government, they get more freedom than other martial artists. He continued, saying it's fine, even if they want to mess around with the idiots who think they have him on a leash. The dark-haired man stated that this is the kind of group the Desolate Fortress is. That being said, the man with dark hair told Warrior Young that he should never overdo it. A woman bowed before another man, who told her she did great just now, though. She replied that she understood. Warrior Young looked back over his shoulder, his expression unreadable as he stood with his companions. The group stood on a hill overlooking a village. One of them remarked about that village over there, prompting another to hum in response. Elsewhere, the village was quiet, with figures moving along the path in the darkness. The path leading into the village stretched out under the night sky. Han Chulmak, holding a crying infant, shouts a challenge towards someone unseen. His face contorted in rage, he demands silence. The infant, clutched tightly in his grip, continues to wail. The third son's eyes widen in shock, his expression shifting to alarm. Han Chulmak's fury intensifies as he identifies his target, a blood flame cultist. His mouth opens in a savage roar, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Energy crackles around the third son, a sign of impending action. The third son launches himself forward, sword drawn and ready to strike.